here, moment to moment, where, okay, there's some more things to learn. Okay, there's some more things to learn. Now, with like, for instance, the I am that I am versus the I am this I am, I've used the I am that I am, meaning I am that, all that is, all that out there. All that out there, that separates me from it. I never even realized that. So even with the level of work that I've been doing with it, I didn't see the little subtle twists that are in there. It is, I am this. You're right there in it. You are engaged. You are not separated from it. So there's all sorts of subtleties. And it was really interesting. When we went on break, Michael and I were talking about something, and he said something in relation to something else, and all of a sudden my brain just went right to that little bit of a statement. There was a lesson under there that has to do with another way of looking at something that we're so used to doing that we don't realize we're doing something that's the opposite of empowerment. The little sentence that was like in a different context that had nothing to do with this particular issue was said, all right, what if somebody came up to you in a parking lot and for no reason at all just hauled off and smacked you in the face? What do you do with this? You have to learn to, to handle your reactions to this person that did this action. My brain went, whoa, wait a minute. Did I, for no reason at all? Okay, that's a cue right there. There's always a reason. And then it went to, wait a minute. I don't see anything at all ever in my experience that is not in my template. I just smacked myself in the face. There's a big difference here, and this is the heart of the victim-victimizer pattern and how we stay in polarity, playing either one or the other. There is a huge lesson under it, and I will try to verbalize it because it's a lesson it's just coming down as I go along here. Where if you look at, somebody comes up and does something nasty to you, or says something nasty to you, the first thing you want to do is well, that wasn't nice. That person did something that wasn't nice. I'm an innocent person. I didn't do anything to you. Why would you do that to me? First of all, you're saying that person is separate from you. You're saying to yourself that your hologram didn't do this. You're saying that your template didn't do this, but it did. You're not recognizing the fact that the event you just experienced, you manufactured, even if they did the action. And it also implies that they are a symbol. They're a symbol person in that event. They are you taking on a different face that came over and did something back to this part of itself. And I was like, oh my God, when you say that person did this to me, so therefore it's that person's fault, I can fix me, but I can't fix them. You can experience a different version of other people. You will experience the version of people that you have embedded in your template. Every person you meet is actually a person that is an energy signature, a consciousness that's also embedded in your template, or you would not see that person or ever meet that person. They would be non-existing to you if they weren't in your template to project out. So the first part of healing is being able to say, okay, I just smacked myself in the face. Why might I have done that? What is my template, the part of me that's in my template that just did this? I just created this. Why did I? What is in there for me to discover that I can heal? The real healing comes when the other person is able to do the same thing in their world. Now you can change your hologram. First you own it, and you realize no matter how bad it was and how much of a victim you seem to think you were, and you may have played the victim in that drama. It feels like being victim. Action was done on you rather than the other way around. However, it was still your template that manufactured it. You still created it. You created yourself as experiencing the victim polarity of the victim-victimizer drama, polarity drama. So it's still yours. First of all, you can disengage the other person. They have their life to deal with. They have to deal with the fact that they just played the other side of the polarity, so they have the same pattern. You have these problems because they have a pattern and you have a pattern that match. So you become action people for each other, symbol people. Once you bring it home and say, okay, I'll own this. I realize I'm the manifestor. Nothing in my hologram. There's not a darn thing in my hologram, including those nasty little ants out there that just bit the heck out of my toes during break, and it hurt. They victimized my toes. I created this. My template created this. You can say, well, okay, I am my template. That's a part of my consciousness that is obviously not this part of my consciousness, because I didn't put it on this level that I wanted to create that. But some level of my consciousness in my template that's below my awareness right now or above it did create this event. First of all, you have owned it, which means you're not, if you don't own it like that and say, I did this, I am playing victim and victimizer right now. I'm playing a drama with myself. Why'd I do that? Okay, that leads you to a step toward empowerment. If you do, the usual thing is, first of all, feel bad. Hey, that wasn't nice. One of the first things that will come up with fight or flight is, I'm going to smack you back. You know, whack, and they go whack, 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 and so it's going to smack itself in the face from now until eternity. You're still in polarity. You're engaged in active polarity, right? You can run away, you can turn around and run because the person still wants to smack you in the face more, or you can just hold your ground and say, excuse me, hologram. I'm going to be in my hologram and take a little detour with my consciousness and go and say, why am I manifesting this now? There's a reason why I'm manifesting this now, but I am peace now. I am this. I am peace now. You're going to change the whole dynamic. You're going to change what they do next. Because if you just go, you just did this to me, and I'm either going to run away from you or I'm going to smack you back, you're making it as if they are doing something to you. They are separate from you. You can't control them at all. So you have to do something in reaction. You're choosing reaction instead of action. This is where people get all defensive toward each other, where they turn away from each other either in fight or flight. If instead you can hold your ground with yourself, because it's really yourself that's causing the problem, and they have the same issue inside of them. That's what drew you together in a state of disharmonic resonance. If you go in and you say to yourself, I created this, I don't know why at the moment. There's a part of me I have to have a conversation with, obviously. Now that conversation may end up with them, because they are still the symbol person that you projected out to embody that disharmonic for you. So sometimes those things will, once you work it out in yourself, they'll come to your door. You will draw them back in a state of harmony, where once you've harmonized it here, you will get in your hologram its harmonized version here. But until you do, until you say, this is mine, I created this, I can change the whole situation, the hologram picture of how these two elements are interacting, because they're interacting this way inside of me. All right? Now, if I choose defense and reaction to it, I'm just going to feed it energy and perpetuate the disharmonic. I might not understand how I created it yet. And it's not a, well, I created this part, maybe 75%, but they created 25%, because the brain will want to do this. You know, because you know that, all right, maybe you're absolutely right in this situation, and they're absolutely wrong in that situation, but you're still in polarity. If you have to be right, you're insisting someone else has to be wrong, and you're still in polarity. When you get to the place where you realize thoughts and ideas are thoughts and ideas, and you don't have to assign a right or wrong value to them, you can choose which ones you want, and let everybody else have the exact same freedom to do the same thing. You don't have to make them wrong to do it. You don't have to agree with them either, as far as you don't have to embody that side. But if you can go into yourself in a conflict situation like that, and this lesson was very important because it has everything to do with, before we get into seeing what the Nibirian data crystal grid is doing, and seeing how victimized our race has been here, if we can understand on the simple little thing, in a personal drama, where somebody comes up and smacks you and you end up as the victim, and you think somebody else outside of you did that to you, you're missing the whole point, and you're totally just disempowered yourself. That is your point of saying, I'm completely out of control. My hologram's controlling me, I'm not controlling it. I am being run over by my hologram. If at that moment you can stop the natural reaction pattern, where you want to get totally engaged and let your hologram swallow you in the reaction pattern, you can say, okay, I could do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to react at all for a moment. I'm going to breathe. I am peace now. I just manifested this, and I am going to figure out why later, but right now, I'm going to heal it. I am peace now. I am peace now. And it's like you have to stop time inside your head while you're holding your ground in your drama and not reacting, which is really weird, because if somebody's getting ready to throw the next punch, you have to really expand that moment real fast. Get yourself back here. You can almost imagine there's a little door in your head, right at your pineal gland, and when you find yourself in a combat type situation, go, okay, right there, it's time to run for the door. Okay, hold the action, and literally just hold the action. I mean, if somebody's coming at you, you can actually get to the point where somebody's going to swing a punch. By the time that would get to you, you could have it shifted, but you will not shift it from here. This is where the action's taking place. It's being manufactured from the dimension above, the station of consciousness that's creating the hologram. You're trying to fix it from the past. You're not going to fix it from the past. You need to go inside and say, okay, where's that exit door? I'm going to stand back from my hologram, and a little part of you, the other part's going, hurry up, I need to know what to do with myself. You know? And the other part of you's going, I am peace now. I am peace now. I am peace now. I am this. I am. It is all me. That is me there. This is me here. I am peace. And this thing shifts in your field, and that shift creates a shift in the person with you. They react differently. You react differently. You can literally stop big messes from happening this way. But it's an art. It's a skill that you develop with practice. It's not something you're going to get immediately because you're so used to reaction. You know, if somebody smacks you and you're going, ah, you know, the adrenaline starts to run, you get all sorts of chemical changes in the body. All of a sudden your body is going on its own direction, your emotions are going on its own direction, your mental body's sitting here going, oh my God, what is it I'm supposed to do? I'm supposed to own it. How do I own it? I am peace. Okay, I am peace. You start saying I am peace, they're going to think you're nuts, and that's okay. That might be the shift that'll do it. You externalize it. I am peace now. What? I'm going to smack you in the face. I am peace now. You know? But you have to know what you mean when you say that. You have to know what you are saying. I am peace, which means I'm going back to the still point right now. Excuse me, be right back in the drama until I figure out what I'm going to do. All right? I am peace. You say it, you can say it out loud if you want. Just like if you're having you can bark and that will do something different, you know, like instead of engaging it with what would be its natural reaction. The other polarity of somebody smacks, the other polarity is either to turn around and run and reverse your polarity or to throw the polarity back and smack them back. You need to catch that reaction pattern. That's that fight or flight stuff. That is a distortion where actually the still point in the middle is I am peace now, run for the door in the pineal gland, and picture yourself on the other side of that door. The hologram's out here for a second. And if you meditate with this technique, getting yourself through the door, while the action's still going on here, but all of a sudden you get your focus back behind it. You are putting your focus in the dimension above, where this is being manufactured. From there, you will be able to say, I am peace now. I am this. I am. And that signature will come down on the next several flashline sequences into the condition that's manifesting before you. It'll take a little bit of time to get good at it. Because we're so used to, the body is used to responding to the other pattern. You need to retrain the emotional body and the physical body reactions, but it starts with what you do with the mind. The reason it's important to understand that, and the funny thing is, the solution to the whole thing is both victim and victimizer. If they did the same thing in that parking lot, person came up to you, smacked you across the face, and what you need to do is say to yourself, I just smacked myself across the face. What the other person needs to do in their hologram too is say, I just smacked myself across the face. You hit the point of union between the two polarities because they just did exactly the same thing. If you realize that you are the same being, if you realize your godness in that moment, you will realize that when someone inflicts a victimization on you, they are manifesting for you. They are doing a job for you. They are saying, I will be the face that your symbol will wear. The symbol that is the symbol of this energy pattern that's in polarity, that's in you. You play this side and I'll play this side, but it's all me. Okay? This is, I am this. It's a real subtle twist of mind that takes you either into power or out of power. If you think something inflicted it on you, you are completely out of power to change it. But if you realize, oh my goodness, I just manifested this, and I'm going to manifest another punch right after that one if I don't figure out how to not do that right now. Okay? It doesn't mean you stand there and let somebody hit you. Once you get better at realizing the perspective that's behind the perspective, this is one perspective that is the past of thought patterns that you held that already came into their flashline expression. You need to go above it, which means back into the blank space inside your head. Go back through the pineal and in there. Train yourself to do it, bless you, train yourself to do it before you're in combat. Because, Okay. The other cheek. Yeah, that might be. That's fun. I'll play with that one. I'll see if somebody will play with that one. Okay, turning the other cheek. It's a little different because usually what turning the other cheek means, if you don't do something else, is you can turn the other cheek and they're going to smack the other one. And if you turn your back, you may get hit over the back of the head. There's more than just turning the other cheek. There's a shift in the angle. But it's coming back into the self, acknowledging that I am the manifester now. I am God now. I am the God that is manifesting this. And you are God. There's a real charge behind that. A lot of people have a hard time with saying, I am God. No lightning balls, nothing fell on my head, I didn't get zapped with a heart attack. Well, I guess God is not mad. We're trained to think of God as some big thing up in the sky that we're little tiny children of, maybe, that we have to, we never claim that was us, our authority. We've been programmed to be afraid to say I am God as if we're doing blasphemy in doing so. That is a twist that was put in here. If you are not God, you are not the manifester of your hologram. And if you're not the manifester of your hologram, somebody else is inflicting it on you. You have a choice. Which way do you think reality works? We've explained enough about how thought is projected outward. We've explained how it becomes particle bases. There's enough evidence at this point to put a good argument for the mental body to say, I am God, aren't I? I am the manifester here. It doesn't mean that you're in control of every other person. What you are in control of is the version of the people you will meet. You can't control another person this way. It's not your job and it's not your right. But people are symbol people too. That level of them you do have a right to interact with. There's many versions of all of us out there, and we only see one at one time. Every person has a loving and higher version. If they are in their lower pole right now and that's what you're meeting, it's because you have that pattern in you and it manifested. But it implies that they have a higher pole. If you have a relationship where you're having disharmony with a person or a collective of people, it implies that there's a place where that has been harmonized. And the idea is to find the place where you are peace now, where you can make the shift to the other perception, to where you can begin to bring into your reality. That might be, I see what you're saying with the turn the other cheek thing. If you're looking this way, 45-degree shift, an angular rotation, a particle spin, you turn the other cheek. It could be translated that way. But there's such an empowering issue under here, because it's the heart of the victim-victimizer stance. All of the way human reactions to each other have been programmed is in offense or defense. Either, if you don't defend yourself, you get walked on. And unfortunately, it tends to be what happens. It really looks like that here. If you're just nice to everybody and you take responsibility for everybody's stuff, they'll keep dumping it on you, and you will find yourself totally stepped on, walked on, and feel like a dish rag. Because you're trying to fix it from here by letting them throw their stuff on you. That doesn't mean you let your symbols throw their stuff on you. You have to be able to perceive two things at once. The individuality and separateness and total validity of each person as an individual, but also, at the same time, the reality that they are just a symbol person that my being just projected out. But they're supposed to do the same thing to you too. That's where you recognize, I am God, you are God, we are God, we just created this, let's create something better, that kind of thing. So there's a space inside yourself that you can go. It's when you go one dimension up from the hologram that you're seeing. That one dimension up appears to be what's inside of your head. And as what's inside your head, where those thoughts become, where you think. If you think about where do you think from the focus that we're in, and the body is here, we actually think from all sorts of levels, but, our toes think. But the thoughts that we're dealing with right now are the ones that are throwing it directly and fully into manifestation, into light and sound patterns that we can see. If we can go into the space where we just did that, where we just made that happen and forgot we made it happen, you can go into the dark space inside of your head. That is the space where you begin to make the transfer into the space that's out of the hologram and into its places where it was manufactured. There are two places from where you are. If you're in your hologram here, there are two places that the hologram is being manufactured from. One is the higher frequency band that would appear as light, that would be up here, that would be the future, a portion of yourself in the future. is bringing that into manifestation. There is also the other part, down here. That would be the lower frequency from where you're from. That would be what would be considered in vibration, your past. And you are at the center here, inside of your head. If you go up into the light, and then down into the dark, and then bring them together, what you've done there is bring at least together the 2 points where the hologram is being manufactured from. And if you bring them together and see them as a vesica Pisces, one dark and one light, you will see this gray zone appear as you bring the 2 circles together and they make a vesica, and then you bring them more together and you see it getting kind of gray instead of dark, and you can look at a black and white circle. One's black, one's white. As you bring the circles together when you're sitting there in your head, you're making a zone. The first will look gray, then it will start to, as you merge those circles together more, you'll start to take on a pale silver quality. You'll start to hit the D12 subharmonic where they unite. Okay? There's a trick you can use to when you're trying to heal the polarities in any drama. Remember that there are 2 circles attached to every drama, and to make the hologram, there are 2 circles, one here, and your dot of consciousness is right in between those 2. Alright? You go into your inner space in here, where it kind of looks like dark at first, and then you visualize the white circle on top and the dark one on the bottom. What you're doing is visualizing that you have the higher set of frequency bands and the lower set of frequency bands that are creating this hologram. You bring them together in your mind's eye and watch the vesica form, and watch the area where the vesica forms first turn gray as black and white merge. And then as you progressively merge them together, when they start to cross past the half-over point, that little point in the circle, they start to literally come together past that point. It starts to go silver. You are literally going into the 12th dimensional subharmonic of the 3 different frequency bands that it takes to manufacture the hologram. Bring it into a circle that then, when you see the circle, the vesica turns into a circle with a point at the center, and imagine yourself at the center of that point saying, I am peace now. I am peace now. That's where you disengage from the hologram for a minute completely. I am peace now in that space. And then watch it go, and it turns to a silver. It turns all silver and then bursts. You've just completely demanifested the conflict pattern that was taking place, and your moment point will change and begin to reflect the new one. It will begin. You have not left the circle separate, which means stuffing part of the past pattern back down, part of the future pattern back up, where you're going to manifest it again at your next moment point and the next. You brought them together and transmuted them with the D12 frequency. You've turned the myons and dions that they're composed of, put them together, and turn them into trions, where they will receive a new pattern, their highest expression, their D12 Christos template, that D12 subharmonic, and that particular drama and the thoughts that created it will get shifted in particle spin. They'll completely leave your field here and go into the part of your field, of your consciousness, that's stationed in that third timeline, the inner timeline, that's built on the unified field where polarities exist within the unity of the whole. This is the process by which we can start to get control of what our hologram is doing to us and realize it isn't doing it to us. We're allowing it to interact with us in a certain way to teach ourselves this. Okay?
You said before the break that you're walking, right? How is it that anyone in this room would know that you're not an actor?
Well, they could, if they're really good at reading my fields and they went up to about D14, they could find my coding and access it that way. They don't know. That's the thing. How do I know you're not?
I believe that...
You know what I mean? This is what it comes down to. And the other question is, so what if you were? What would that mean? Okay? How would that change what I would do? That's where the thought pattern would lead if you were going to try to figure out what to do with it. Now, I know I'm not an Anunnaki. I know where I incarnated from. But what is very interesting about this, and this goes into what I wanted to explain of how this little thing about a personal victimizing issue, like if you're the person who went and smacked somebody in the parking lot, and you might not even exactly know why you did that, kind of lost control and just felt like it did it. That's telling you something. You just manifested something. You smacked a part of yourself. You just victimized a part of yourself. Why did you do that? But there's a part beyond the 1-2 person thing. When we come into races, all right now.
Can I answer the question?
Can you answer? You ask it and answer it too.
Well, you said, how do I know you're not an actor? You responded, my answer is that if you were truly a divine being of sources, I mean, Melchizedek is the divine law of one.
Mm-hmm.
There's no outside the one.
Right.
So we all are Anunnaki.
Yes, but there's more detail than that.
Well, but the thing is that you have to accept the precept that I'm everything. I'm the fallen angel and I'm the risen angel. Or the
yes, to a degree. But looking at it in that level of simplicity, you're missing some vital facts that will change. You're leaving yourself open for something there that you don't realize by that belief. Okay? Anunnaki consciousness, draconian consciousness, and human consciousness we're all one originally. So we're ants and trees and planets and supernovas. Okay? I mean, I'm supernova. You know, that doesn't mean right now my body is shaped like a big star right here in this time frame. Okay? Right now, we have elements of each other in us. We are all one when you take us all back up to source. But we are also individualized once we come into polarity. The Anunnaki races evolved in a completely different way than the human races did. Their souls, the people who inhabit bodies who have Anunnaki coding, have different intentions because their creators, the ones who projected themselves into those forms, had a different intention. They were created from the point 250 billion years ago when the fallen Anu Elohim chose to make a stand where they wanted to take over from D11, their own time matrix. They blew up Stargate 12, the universal Stargate 12, in this. And you can do this. You can blow up holes in the mind of God. You can actually do it. And it makes a real pain in the neck to repair them. They have to be repaired. Or the potentiality of God imploding on itself is actually there, but it'll never happen because Source will not allow that to happen. That's where the polarity has to be brought into balance if it gets bad enough for something like that to happen. But the Anunnaki races were not created as a Christos race. A Christos race has a D12 divine blueprint that's connected directly to the primal light fields in D13 through 15, and that's connected to the primal sound fields, and that's connected to Source. Now, they came out of Source originally as a stream of consciousness with all of us, but then when we all came out, we all took on diversified in different forms. The closest relationship that humans have to Anunnaki races are the fact that humans were created through the genetic chain of the Elohai Elohim. The Elohai Elohim had one particular family that co-created another type of race, another version of the Elohim, with the Brahmarama, which were the violet ray people. They became two different types of beings. They became the aquatic ape hominid forms. This is like in density 3 and the first harmonics of density 4. All right, these are like etheric and pre-matter races. It was one of those races that chose, because it ended up with code convolution, which is a distortion in its natural scalar pattern that created distortion in consciousness, where it took a path of evolution that was never intended. Now, because Source loves all, it will absorb that.
This means that Source is out of control. And I believe that Source is fully in control, and that if we talk about 5 harmonic universes, okay, that is in the time matrix, and everybody says time matrix is illusion, virtual reality.
It looks pretty real when you're here, because if the time matrix didn't have its reality when your consciousness was holding that pattern, you'd be able to immediately right now show us and demonstrate for us by popping out of here and then coming back and saying, see, it's all that easy. You're not able to do that yet, and neither am I. Because it is simple, but is also, there are complexities of the dynamics of physics that set in motion the ability for consciousness as one to express itself in many pieces. All right. We are one. We are one with the Anunnaki and everything else when we are expressing fully as Source. But Source exists in two states simultaneously. It exists as Source, and it exists as Source expressing an individuation, which means Source changing portions of itself so it can turn and look at itself and interact with itself. The intention, there are certain intentions that were original intentions for this time matrix. Time matrices are born in Source because Source has intentions as far as what Source would like to experience in that particular time matrix. Yes, there's some aspects. No. That's not what I'm saying.
It's predetermined. How do you associate free will?
You have free will within a parameter, within a predetermined structure and system within Source. That is what I'm saying. You have a range of free will, but at a certain point, there is Source will. And you should not have a difference between your will and Source will because you are Source. Free will comes.
Could I have a difference?
Free will comes from having a parameter of action where you have a choice to manifest as your original intention as source, or to take the opposite stance if you so choose. Source has done that in becoming the consciousness of races. There are time matrices that were done specifically to explore what happens when Source decides to come into fragmentation to explore itself and pretends it doesn't know itself at all. They're not real pleasant places to be. They're the places that our rumors of hell come from.
Well,
but
it's a place where Source pretends it doesn't know what it is. We come into it completely.
All right. Right now, in the hologram, it appears that that's exactly what it is. But the problem with this is, and this is where original intention comes in, the original intention set for this time matrix, through which it manifested, through the agreements of the portions of Source who said, we will come in as the ascended masters. We will come in here. Thank you. I got bit on the toe before. Thank you. We will come in as ascended masters with intentions A through Z. Okay? The intentions were set for the formation of the purposes of this particular time matrix. Those intentions were expressed in an agreement called the Emerald Covenant. Those intentions were the divine intentions as set by Source when it chose to fragment itself down into the Jnanas fields of ascended masters to become the sound fields and the light fields of the Brahma Rishi levels. Source had a reason for what it wanted to experience in this time matrix. And the creation of the Anunnaki races and the fallen Anu Elohim was not an element that was originally part of the plan. Now that plan could be explored elsewhere, and because Source is all, and because Source you can't get away from itself, it can't kick people out of itself, it will attempt to harmonize every manifestation of potentiality that pops up that it didn't originally think was going to happen in the original plan. This is what occurred. Source came in, it fragmented its identity first into the Jnanas, ascended masters, then portions of them fragmented their identity down into the Brahma Rishi in the primal light fields, then portions of them fragmented other portions of themselves down to become the Christos founders races. The Christos founders races had agreements that were the reflection of the agreements of who they were all the way up the chain, of why this matrix had been created, for what purposes of study and exploration, and what purposes of experience. There were things that, all right, those races created more. They put their consciousness into some smaller bodies, different types of bodies. They began to play with what it means. All right, I'm trying to, you're not hearing me and you're not letting me finish.
Well, it looks as though God lost control.
I'm feeling very strong to respond to that.
Okay.
It's coming in real strong.
Good.
What God told me about this question is that there's parts of God that didn't know itself. Parts of God that were in oneness, that literally did not know itself as itself. And the only way it could know itself was to create form, to create the hologram. And in the hologram, it discovered there were even aspects of itself that wanted to deny itself as existing. And to me, when I understand it in that way, that's where the Anunnaki has birthed from, was parts of God that didn't know itself, not knowing itself, and wanted to experience its ignorance of itself. And that's what the reflection to me of Anunnaki are.
Okay. See, Anunnaki, we're not calling them evil or bad. Anunnaki are loved. But what the point that you're basically saying, well, if I follow the train of thought and I accept the belief that you're holding right now about, yes, okay, my perception is that if I chose to use those particular ideas that you've asked a question about, if I chose to say, well, Source created it that way, the Anunnaki are there too, they're allowed to be what they are even though they're playing the victims in all of this, and I just really need to do nothing because it's all perfect, what would be the outcome? There would be a lesson on the other end of it, where that part of Source that chose to explain that to itself would remind itself of its original intention and what it created by probably experiencing its opposite because it chose not to take any action to bring the original intention back into its wholeness. The Anunnaki races are not bad, and we were not intended, humans were not intended to have a DNA template that was built like the Anunnaki template. Do you know the difference between humans and beings that are out of Christos matrices and beings that are considered anti-Christos genetic races? It doesn't mean they're evil, that you destroy them or get rid of them. What it means is, it goes right back down to physics. In the Christos races, consciousness picks up particle units. It manifests itself as particle units coming down using the natural ratios that allow the dimensional structure to exist so the framework can exist. They have fire letter sequences that build their templates, very specific organizations that become the DNA template. All right? There are fire letter sequences that run in the natural sequence of how dimensions are structured. If you have in your template the structures of the natural dimensional structure, from D12 on down, if you have dimension 12 in all its fire letter sequences, dimension 11 and all the way down to dimension 1, that is considered a Christos race template. Not just humans have it. There are other races in the galaxies that have it too. Now what that allows for is because you have every one of the sub-frequency bands that correspond to the precise dimensional structure that holds the hologram together, you have the ability to spiral down all the way and then to spiral your consciousness back up and get out. You have a free interrelationship and a free open communication line between you as source and you as source manifest. There is no difference. You are experiencing yourself in source expressing and source as not expressing in form all at the same time, because you have open conduits called fire letter sequences that are built on particle units that will allow that open conduit. Now, a template, a DNA template, a consciousness template of a being that is considered an anti-Christos being. And that doesn't mean it's evil. It doesn't mean you hate it. It doesn't mean it's any less valuable or less blessed than you are. It just means it has some evolutionary problems. If it has a template that has the fire letter sequences, first of all, they don't have 12 strands, the templates for 12 strands, they can come down in, everything started with 12-strand pattern. Because it started with, actually, everything started with an indigo pattern. Everything came into manifestation holding all the coding. But if choices were made and interactions were done in the middle dimensional fields that caused reactions that weren't a part of the original template, that actually neutralized and blocked out portions of the natural structure of dimension 1 through 12, it leaves holes in the template, portions of the frequency that can't process. And that means portions of the consciousness are stuck in time. A being that has a template that has holes in it like that has some evolutionary difficulties. Then there are the beings that have not only holes in it, but they have all of the fire letter sequences running in reverse. All right, where they actually have the codings of each sub-frequency band. If it's supposed to be A, B, C, D, E, they have it running from E to A. This changes the form and the mathematical relationship between particle units, and it keeps them dimensionalized where they cannot take one dimension of consciousness and blend it with another to progressively accrete. Beings that have this kind of template are stuck in time because their systems are not working properly. When their hologram manifests through that template, they get fragmented consciousness on each level. They can get a body form, but what they can't do is embody the primal life force currents that keep coming down. They are finite. Their bodies will die. They will not be able to transmute them. Sounds a lot like us these days, doesn't it? The reversed matrix DNA templates, which are consciousness templates, that is the difference between the original human design and the Anunnaki and Draconian human design. Anunnaki races didn't start as Anunnaki races the source created. They didn't come in as Anunnaki races. They came in as Elohai Elohim, that then combined with one of the other Christos races, and then found that there were some coding compatibilities because of certain things they did that were very much on the border of, do we want to explore this in this time matrix or not? The answer eventually became, oh dear, we shouldn't have, because it created a mess. It created portions of itself that decided they were going to rebel and try to take over and have their own creation matrix, free from source. Oh, the Stargate, the way you get in here. Now, that's right. That shows you the twist in consciousness it takes. And that twist in consciousness comes from running your fire letters backwards, where you cannot bring in the understanding of the original intention. The life force currents, whatever degree they can get in, reverse, and...
How do you know what source thinks? How do you perceive what source thinks? I mean, I wouldn't even dare stand up and suggest anything that it can. It's way beyond. Way beyond.
It's way beyond you, huh?
Way beyond the matrix.
It's right in you. You're in it. You are it. Do you hear what I'm saying? Well, how can I speak? I can speak for God, the part of God that I am. Okay?
Excuse me, can I ask a question, please? Anyone that's in the room now that wants to continue this particular exchange, either question and answer, say yes, and if you don't say yes, can we resume the direction that the channel was going before? Right? There is all of you. There is the we of this, okay? I can feel you all wanting to move on in the direction that we're going.
Okay. We are still going in the direction, though.
Due time to individual questions, which is what I think has been given quite fairly. Okay? If you want to resume the direction the channel was going in before, say yes now.
Yes now.
Okay. Be there to help them heal, which was our job in the first place, why we were created, to come into this time matrix, restore the balances, and help the trapped consciousness to regain its Christos template so it could regain its open connection to Source, heal its distorted thought patterns, and get back out. But if we don't acknowledge the differences, the fact that our templates work different, therefore our consciousness, while we're in density, works different, they will make choices and do things that we would find horrendous. We would look at them, because humans have a vibration with them that is loving and nurturing of all things. We would look at races that actually could go in and slaughter everything. Sounds like humans in the last 2,000 years. We would just be horrified at what they were capable of. All right? Anunnaki mind thinks different because its codes are different, so it can't get certain frequencies of consciousness in. If you cannot bring in D12 frequency into your consciousness at all, you progressively go into a space of separation from other races, separation from Source, separation from your own kind, separation from other kinds, and you become warring and defensive, and you see survival of the fittest. And you see competition instead of loving cooperation. This is the type of consciousness the Anunnaki and Draconian races have. They didn't always have it. The Anunnaki were born with it. The Anunnaki carry a horrible burden. They were created by a fallen matrix, the fallen Anu Elohim, which was a different race. All right, Anu Elohim decided, I'm going to make. It's important to understand this, so we understand what we're dealing with as we get back into the victimization thing, because this is about the biggest drama of it you're going to see that we're in the middle of on the planet. Okay.
I only asked the question to let you know that I'm part of your hologram.
Yes, I know. That's why I engaged it. I know you're part of my hologram. I know I manifest you, and you manifest me, and we all manifest each other. Okay, but if we can understand that we have templates, our DNA templates, and if they're running well, we have our I am that, I am this, I am consciousness with us at all times. We know ourselves fully as Source and fully in individuation, all at the same time, and the experience is a joyful one. And there is no such thing as bad or evil in that experience, because you understand what all of it is about. So you don't assign judgment or value to things, you just love them. You're in a state of vibrational harmonization. That is a state of wonder and beauty to walk the hologram in. Now, races that have a DNA template that has the 12 strands, that has the ability to anchor the D12 Christos field, which is the first point with the primal life force currents, where they start to come in not polarized, where you have the polarity, but you have a bigger current of unity coming in that holds the polarity, but it holds it in a field of love, harmonization. All right? If they can't bring in D12 frequency into the template, it progressively creates more and more polarity. They can't bring together those polarized units of myons and dions that they're made of, that their consciousness is made out of. Anunnaki are suffering from this, and so are the Draconian races. And in their suffering, they are capable of thought forms that are absolutely horrible. They harm themselves in doing this. They don't realize that I am you and you are me, and we are this. They feel separate. So when we talk about victimization, now this comes back to us, and what do we do with this? Okay, we are fortunate enough to have at least the blueprint left for the Christos template. What the Anunnaki have been doing progressively to us since the Atlantean period is, in the Atlantean period, they were on planet in physical form with us. In fact, way back, there's a history that goes back with this that I won't, actually it's a good time. I'll begin a little bit of this if I can find my book. Here we go. The history is very, very interesting. There's something called the creation of the Leviathan force. The Leviathan force were the races out of the tribe of Iluli Levi. The Levi tribe, the Levi tribe. Now, the Leviathan force is where our destinies and the Anunnaki destinies in this particular time cycle became highly intertwined. Okay? This is just basically the third seeding of our race here. We've had 2 seedings of the human race that took place long before. The first was 250 million years ago. Humans were seeded on parallel Earth, and 25 million years ago they were seeded on this Earth, and they got wiped out. Then there was a second seeding that happened, I believe, about 3 million, I don't think I have that on this list, 3,700,000 years ago, I think it was. And that one got wiped out. Then there was the third seeding, okay? We are part of the third seeding of the human races in this time field, in this reality field. The reason why 3 seedings were needed was because the conflict between the Draconians, the Anunnaki, and the human races who are here to try to restore the Christos template to Earth ended up in battles and wars that were devastating. And the humans haven't won one yet, but we're still here, which is an accomplishment. Right? In the distorted thinking and the sickness, it's a sickness of consciousness when one thinks they are separate from Source to the degree that they can go around killing and pillaging and stealing anything they feel like without any remorse. The very sad part about races that have that problem is they honestly feel no love, no bonding to other life forms. The Anunnaki have a vested interest in the stargates here. They're extremely intelligent races. They have a vested interest in the stargates as a conquest mechanism. Conquest for them is driven by the desire for survival because they feel like a finite race, because they know they have severed their connection to the 12th dimensional frequencies, which means the energy that they came in with, the amount of consciousness they came in with when they entered the time matrix with everybody else 950 billion years ago, that is finite, and it will expend itself if they can't open their body forms and their consciousness to receive more of the primal life force currents that are always circulating through here. They don't have the ability, while they keep choosing to have their templates run in reverse, so they do not have to experience the oneness. There are some really twisted ideas that were born out of fear that the Anunnaki hold. Fear that happened in the very early settlements of the Lyran-Syrian time period, which was like 250 billion years ago. But these races come in, and some of them have evolved. Now, the Anunnaki races were not created originally. They were created by the fallen Anu Elohim. 250 billion years ago, there was a big war in the Lyra star system. It was called the Lyran Elohim War. And this is where 2 groups of beings that had been the Elohi Elohim and the Seraphim Christos races. 2 of them started to go into digression where they were starting to think thought forms that didn't belong in this time matrix. It wasn't what was intended, and they needed help. Help was offered by the other founders' races, and they tried to help them, but they rebelled because the one group wanted the founders to go and destroy the other group, because the other group was not acting the right way, and if they didn't act the right way, then they were afraid they would destroy them. It was a whole decision built on fear. The founders said, no, we're not going to go destroy the Seraphim races. They need help in evolving back to their original clear thinking, and so do you. We will help both of you. Because that choice was made, the Anu Elohim matrix decided, well, forget you founders, we'll take it over and do it ourselves. So they launched a genocide campaign against the fallen Seraphim, and because the founders wouldn't intervene and get rid of the Seraphim for them. They also, in order to stop the founders from, and the Brenna Rishi from the primal light fields, to stop them from intervening and stopping them from killing the races of the fallen Seraphim, they actually blew up, destroyed, got it running on a reverse matrix which makes it implode, the Universal Stargate 12, which is the gate in and out of density in this system. It took millions and millions of years to repair the entry point to this system, which meant all the consciousness that was in that time matrix, this time matrix, could only ascend furthest up to D11. And at D11, it was being run and controlled by this group called the Anu Elohim. The Anu Elohim were part of what was called the Giovanni matrix. The Giovanni matrix was once part of the families of consciousness that were part of the Elohi Elohim. This is where the word Jehovah comes from. The Giovanni matrix was a fallen angelic matrix. They created another race called the Anunnaki for a purpose. When things were getting really bad here, again, now this was a war that started 250 billion years ago. And there was a lot of progress made. The founders, working with the Brenna races, the Rishi in Density 5, were able to repair Stargate 12. They were able to restore its balances, and it took millions of years to do it, because that's a big stargate, and there's a lot of flashline sequences you have to put back in order to get it to work right again. But this time matrix was salvaged from becoming a phantom time matrix. There was another one that did become a phantom time matrix, which is one that part of this particle base is going to go into in the 3-day particle conversion period. Now, when the Stargate 12 was repaired, the founders' races realized the conflict dramas were so bad here that a race strain would have to be created to come in literally and stay in the densities as the security team that would take care of the stargates, because they were blowing up smaller gates all over the place and taking them over and getting them running on a reverse matrix, which was meaning breaking their ability to run D12 frequency so they could be run on D11 reverse current and be controlled by the Giovanni matrix, the fallen Anu Elohim matrix. So there's been a quest, a holy grail quest, the grail, the Grual points for all of the Stargate systems, the control points for the Stargates. The grail quest has been going on for billions of years in this time matrix. Now, with the Anunnaki races, they came into the picture when the human races came into the picture. All right, before the human races, there was a race called the Azarites, where the 3 primary founders races, the Elahai Elohim, the Seraphai Seraphim, and the Brahmarama races that were, they represented each of the 3 primal light fields, got together and formed a pattern that had all of their patterns in it, because through that race pattern, anything stuck in this time matrix could get its frequency up enough to incarnate into that pattern and get all its coding back. Any consciousnness would be compatible with that particular pattern to incarnate into, because it had parts of the 3 primary founders' races that everything else was born out of. So they were called the Azarites. They were a blue-skinned race, and they, for eons, held a security position in this time matrix. They would go into systems that were, either almost destroyed or in threat of being destroyed, and they would bring the teachings of the Emerald Covenant, and they would bring the love, and they would offer bioregenesis opportunity for any of the fallen races. They would offer them the opportunity that if they'd stop fighting and enter the Emerald Covenant, they would have the assistance they needed and be given the knowledge they needed to restore their templates so they wouldn't be hijacked into this time matrix anymore. They were stuck. So the Emerald Covenant races, and there's many, many more of them than there are the others, have progressively worked with this system way before humans came in on the scene. Now, humans came in on the scene when there were certain periods where this time matrix looked like it was healing, and then the conflicts would flare up again, and there'd be setbacks, and there'd be other gates destroyed, and almost Gate 12 destroyed again, which didn't happen a second time yet, fortunately. At that point, the beings, the Ascended Masters who had come in as the Azarites, were tired and decided a new wave of consciousness would be brought in to the matrix in order to serve the security role. And the new wave of consciousness would also have other alterations to its template that would allow it more tolerance of the densities, because the Azarite template, they had a very difficult time with density 1 and intervening here, because their biologies were so sensitive. When they would downscale their vibration to come here, they wouldn't last very long in this time field, which meant if there were problems down here, they had a very short limit of time that they could come in and do something about it before they would get sick, and they'd have to leave, or they'd lose their ability to leave, and they'd end up dying bodies. And that wasn't an option for the Azarites. They weren't about to start leaving their DNA and their body material all over the place, because they know that causes problems as far as getting back out of the time matrix. So a new race was created that had more tolerance. It had some of the density 1 system frequency put into the template, so they would be able to come in and go through any of the densities. They'd have the ability to evolve and ascend up to any level, and also to walk around down here for as long as needed, whenever necessary. They were the breatharian humans. They were called the Oraphim race, the sons of light, because they were literally the projections of the light and sound field, the new wave of consciousness that came in. Now, as soon as, this happened about 568 million years ago, and it happened in density 2, where the first Oraphim were seeded. And the Oraphim race, as soon as they were seeded, there was a reaction from the Jehovian matrix, the fallen angelic Jehovian matrix. They decided they were going to create a race and put themselves into it that also could go into the densities and get rid of these other guys, because now the humans that had come in had the ability to go down and take care of the damage that was being done down here. They were going to try to take over the whole time matrix by getting control of the lower frequencies and working their way up and getting the whole thing running in reverse. When the humans were created, the Anunnaki were created as a reaction to that. They were created with one intention. Their creation intention from their creator gods was to destroy humans. That was their creation purpose. They live with an imprint that has a huge amount of arrogance attached to it. Their creators felt that they were superior to anything else that was in this time matrix. They should be lords of the time matrix, and if the other guys wouldn't let that happen, well, we just take it from them. This was the attitude the Anu Elohim have. It's because of their distortions of consciousness. They forget their oneness.
So they don't understand the hologram model. They don't get the hologram.
Actually, they understand lots of it. They understand how they can use it to sever the connections, and this is why some of this is on security clearance, because if we don't get it fast and then get to use it right, if it gets down here, it gets in their hands, they start to, aha, that's the piece we couldn't access, because they can't pull anything more than D11 information, because they can't pull D12 or higher. This is the Katic level information that's being brought down from the primal sound fields, the first individuation level, the original templates. So they love us. We can bring them in, and they go in like sharks at a feeding frenzy. They want to take the knowledge, the pieces they can't find. Once it's downloaded here, they can find it, and they can take it and twist it to a different intention. So that's what's been being done all along. They know lots of creation physics. That's why they'll teach you Merkaba like they're doing on Planet these days. But they'll teach you the wrong spins, knowing you couldn't tell the difference if you tried, because they took all the knowledge away from this place. And they rendered the DNA where you can't remember. So they use the creation physics that they understand in order to take a stance against Source. They don't want to experience the union because they do not remember what it feels like to have the D12 connection. Once you have D12 frequency running in you, there is a love that comes, a core sense of, we know we are connected, therefore I could not harm you, for I am only harming myself. You go into cooperation instead of competition. The Anunnaki don't feel that, and they don't understand it because they don't have the template. Just like I said, you can't see anything or experience anything that's not in your template. They do not remember, they do not have the feeling for what divine love means, what Christos love means, because of this. I'm sorry? What?
Does that mean they cannot be saved?
No. I always looked at it this way, where there's life, there's hope. And there's always life, so there's always hope. There have been many, many billions of years of bioregenesis programs offered for them at this point. They have been co-evolving with us, and this time matrix has been turned into a war zone between, it's really bizarre, because the Anunnaki, the fallen Anunnaki races and the fallen Draconian races don't like each other either. So they fight with each other, and they try to get rid of humans. They have one thing in common. They both want to get rid of humans, but then they want to destroy each other as well. Now, it is not easy to heal a person who comes in on an Anunnaki imprint, because they are completely missing the 12 subharmonics in all of their strands. It's not just that they're missing strand 12. They are missing every 12th subharmonic all the way down, which means their strands can't plug in. They can get all the way up to D11 cognition on each dimension, but they can't figure out how this dimension applies to this one, or what the connections are between them to get an aha feeling of consciousness and understanding. So they work on these very compartmentalized type thought forms. There is a healing process that's involved, and this is what this gets into. One of the many attempts of the healing processes is called DNA bioregenesis. There was a hybridization program that was offered to certain groups of Anunnaki that had entered the Emerald Covenant. They accepted the Founders thing finally. They said, okay, we'll stop fighting. We won't try to destroy humans anymore. Help. If you'll help us, we will do this. So they were trusted, and they were offered an opportunity to progressively over a period of time hybridize with the human race, where they were not supposed to, it was not supposed to be they were just like let loose on the field so they could hybridize with everything that moved. It wasn't like that. They were allowed to have a presence on the planet, and then one by one they would pick up a strand template. One set of generations after like several thousand years would pick up one strand template. Then that species would be taken and evolved to pick up the next template, and that to pick up the next, until they got 5 strand templates that were the human ones that would reverse back to the normal order, the distorted first 5 strands of theirs. This would allow them to ascend out of the density 1 field and get up to Tara, into density 2, where they could then do the process for the other strands, slowly building their ability to hold a 12-strand pattern, because their template was intersected with the human template, piece by piece. They were supposed to be another Christos race. They were being evolved to be a Christos race, to stand with us as portions of the guardians of this time matrix to help heal the Draconian races. There was a whole story that's going to come out in the Forbidden book, the I think it's called the Forbidden Testaments of Revelation book. But some of what's going to come out is when we look at this list here, this talks about the hybridization experiment. It started right in through here, about 250,000 BC. There was an invasion here of Anunnaki races from the Palladian Nibiruan races, because there's several different strains of Anunnaki, and some of them don't like each other either. But the Palladian Nibiruan ones had come in here and invaded. And angelic humans were already on the planet doing their gatekeeper thing. They were here for millions of years. They created a race called the Lucas race because they were fighting amongst themselves of who was going to work in the gold mines. They were harvesting gold to take back to Nibiru because they needed it. And they started to fight. Well, I don't want to work in the gold mines. It's icky down there. Well, I don't want to work there. Your group can do it. No, your group can do it. So they started fighting with each other. So there was a truce called by them deciding, okay, we'll create a slave race. So what they did was they took certain coding from their own DNA template. They genetically engineered it in their laboratories because they had spaceships flying around a lot, and they had literally flying laboratories. They were excellent geneticists. They could have fixed their own problem if they had cared to. At least the higher ones could have. But they decided that they would create a slave race here. And it's really funny because this is where they take history right now with the channels and twist the heck out of it. Because they want us to think we were that slave race they created and look how nice we've evolved and now they'll be nice to us and treat us as equals. That wasn't us. It wasn't us at all. They created a slave race. Okay, maybe about 5 minutes. We created a slave race that had portions of certain genetic strains that were from Nibiru, which were related to the aquatic ape strains. They themselves were the aquatic ape hominid Anunnaki strains. Some of them are the bipedal dolphin people. These were not those. These were the aquatic ape hominid Anunnaki. They combined their template with certain qualities from animal templates from Nibiru, and then certain qualities from animal templates from here, from Earth. So the species would be strong enough to survive on Earth and be coded to Earth. And they created the race just to really boss around and to use, to exploit. Now, they also, at the time, were progressively raiding human civilizations. And because they really liked the fact that humans had potentiality for compassion and bonding, which could be used if you put just a little of it in, a being has an ability to feel and bond. So if it likes you or if it's scared, it'll listen better. As a control mechanism, they took portions of the captured humans. They would extract DNA template samples from them, and they would use part of that to engineer. They couldn't directly breed with human beings at that point. You could not produce live young through the process because they would just die. But with this new template, there's a little tiny bit of the human element put in that was extracted from the humans they had raided and killed but got their DNA samples.
Which day is the day now?
The day is the day are the Anunnaki ones. They're the Palladian Nibiruan Anunnaki. Yeah, and these are the familiar names that we find in our history of the Enki, Enlil, and Marduk. All their Sumerian legends and all that stuff. These were that group of Anunnaki. Okay, now they created a race called the Lulkas. The Lulkas were very primitive. They weren't highly intelligent, but they had the feeling nature of humans. So you could scare them because they'd feel the fear, so they'd listen better. And they were sent into the mines to work, and they were abused horribly, and they were treated terribly. These are the races that our scientists call the Neanderthal. Okay, that's what the Neanderthal man is. That was not human. That was not part of our genetic line, other than the fact there was a tiny bit of our template put into it. We didn't evolve out of these guys. Now, science knows that too. There's not a lot of anything similar in the DNA they're finding between Neanderthals and humans. Now, humans do seem to have some similarity with some of the other races that go on the other end of the Cro-Magnon lines. Cro-Magnons were interesting. The Cro-Magnon races came out of something that was a really big mistake when you look back on it. But as far as I wouldn't do it again, I wouldn't be in this drama again if I knew the outcome was going to be. There was an opportunity offered to the races of Anunnaki that decided they wanted to enter the Emerald Covenant for bioevolution here so they could get their DNA templates back. Now there was already a race, an Anunnaki race, a primitive one, that was on the planet that could be used as the genetic base that would allow for the Anunnaki you could build it up by progressively adding one strand of the human coding to it as you grew it. Now these weren't humans, and humans did not incarnate into these forms. The human soul matrix did not. There was a race, there was a stages of a hybridization program where the Locust Neanderthal races that were not capable of interbreeding with humans at all physically, their templates were genetically engineered to have a little bit of elements of an old hybrid race line that was an Anunnaki human hybrid race line called the Hybornians. They were from a different system, but that was a link between them and between us, so they could start the bioregenesis here. Now, when the Locust Neanderthal were given the first upgrade, these were the ones that were put under the protection of the guardian races and of the humans. We were to help them evolve, and they were very sweet. They were actually like very loving animal people that had more intelligence than average animals, but they did not have the rational mind thinking abilities that we associate with being cognizant and highly intelligent here. Okay, now that happened in 250,000 BC. The Locust Neanderthal created in 246,000 BC, which was a bit later than that. Let's see, I get my BCs and 80s, yeah. Okay, coming forward. 246,000 BC, all sorts of wars were breaking out between the Anunnaki, and they were trying to raid the human civilizations, and the Maharaji of Sirius B came in and tried to do a truce. He said, okay, guys, how about we do the Emerald Covenant? Remember that? So they brought it back, humans entered it, some of the Anunnaki entered it. That's the point where with the hybridization experiment could be brought into actualization to help the races of Anunnaki that had entered the Emerald Covenant, to help them evolve into getting their 12 strands back. Now, there were several different stages to this. We had first in the meantime, we're seeding they're called the cloister human races. They were on the planets. They were the real tall ones that had, they were the indigos, basically. They had the indigo imprints. We were seeding our guys with the smaller templates, the 12-strand human beings, and then the root race human beings. They were all here to hold frequency. We were all equal. We were just here to hold frequency. So we're doing our stuff at the same time as we're running this hybridization program to help the Anunnaki races. Now, let me see, the next stage of it. It was 155,000 BC that the Anunnaki bioregenesis program began, where officially it was decided, 246,000 BC, that this would happen. By 155,000 BC, the permission was given to begin this and to do the genetic engineering to create a family line of what are they called, the Locust races, that would evolve to hold Anunnaki consciousness and progressively evolve upward back into what would be equal in its own way to a human form. Okay, 155,000 BC was level 1. They went from becoming, the names changed as they went up here. We went from the Locust race, that was the Neanderthal, into a race called the Luhari. The Luhari races were the first upgrade, and they were called the Cro-Magnon 1. Okay, with the Cro-Magnon races and the remnants of those races that are found. That was the first level of the hybridization program. 152,000 BC, the Luhari races were then upgraded to what was called the Iluli Levi Cro-Magnon 2 races. Now, this was the first race that had enough human template that could actually have live interbreeding with humans, which released a Pandora's box of a nightmare on this planet. All of a sudden, this race could be used to infiltrate human race lines, because you could rape a human and have it have a hybrid child. This is what started to happen. As soon as the Iluli Levi races were created, they were used by the consciousness that was incarnating. You had Emerald Covenant Anunnaki consciousness incarnating into them. Then you had the Anu Elohim going after them, doing field possession, taking over the bodies, and using those bodies to go infiltrate human race lines. This created progressively something called the Leviathan force, which was the force that was the Antichristos force here, the Illuminati family lines, the beginnings of them, where they were set here. Who's in those bodies that look like humans? Aren't humans. They're the Anu Elohim, and the Dracs were able to do it too. Because the Anunnaki that were used, the template that was used, that made the Lucas, those Anunnaki, the Pleiadian Nibiruans, the Jehovian Anunnaki don't like them because they're not pure string. They have part Draconian codes and part Anunnaki codes in their template. So this new race, the Iluli Levi, could be infiltrated by both fallen angelic matrices. The experiment wasn't stopped there, because there were still these consciousness, the Anunnaki and Draconians that wanted to evolve and that were still, respecting the Emerald Covenant. These guys they didn't do anything wrong. They were being victimized too by the fallen angelic matrices. So the experiment continued with a lot of protection, as much protection as we could give, and there were several other stages that brought us up to, all of a sudden, we all look the same, and we're not supposed to. The Iluli Levi, The next stage up was the Iluli Judah, which became the first kind of Cro-Magnon, borderline Homo sapien. We're not even Homo sapiens. We read like one genetically now, but when you unblock the gene code and the rest of it manifests, we don't even read Homo sapien. What's happening right now is because of the blockages on strands 1, 2, 3, and 4, we are similar to the Anunnaki races because they inherited the imprints for our strands through this evolution program. But humans and indigos. Okay, humans came out of indigos, really. The indigos were the ones that had the real high templates, and out of that were made the 12-strand human templates. Okay, basically, we went through these stages of the hybridization program, and this is the stories that are being explained in pretty much detail in the new book that's coming out, that led up to the point where the massacre happened. You had a Leviathan force progressively being raised by different competing versions of the fallen angelic Anunnaki races. You had Jehovian ones, you had the Palladian Nibiruran ones, the Thoth matrix was one of those, the Enoch matrix was involved with the Jehovian ones for a while. Thoth and Enoch, these names go right back to the beginning of this experiment because they were the first ones to receive the ability to go through this hybridization and see how high they could get, and they were successful. They were able to they became temporarily Christed, well almost. They got up to about 11 and a half strands of getting them back in the right order. They were appointed as the overseers of the hybrid experiment to help get the other ones back into the Christos. And at two different points, after thousands of years of really supporting the Emerald Covenant, after thousands of years, one thing really got to Thoth. Thoth had one problem. He never quite overcame the Anunnaki imprint of arrogance and race supremacy. He still felt that the Anunnaki races should be the ones in control of things. And at a certain point he got pushed where there was an Anunnaki reclamation movement that they were going, there's whole sorts of groups of them, the fallen angelics, and he decided he would join them. Shortly after, in reaction to it, to try to protect his own people, Enoch joined too. And this was all in Atlantis. This is where the Atlantean conspiracy began. So what we're living right now is the end of this train of the hologram. This is the imprinting that we have, that we keep manifesting as our past that we don't see. It's the stuff, the undercurrent that's going on in the drama right now. So there's a whole drama that if we come back to the victim versus victimization thing, we first of all need to realize there must be something in us that is creating, that is transmitting out the fact that we keep playing the victim. Why do we care? We've been doing it for billions of years. What's happening here? What is in the human template that is creating this problem? That goes back to when the humans were created. Part of the Giovanni matrix, the fallen Anu Elohim Giovanni matrix, which was originally part of the Elohai Elohim family, part of them had gone back into what was called host matrix. They decided that they were going to be nice and wanted to become Christed again. So we humans were created with a bit of an element of that template in it to allow their races to evolve too. We have a piece of their coding and we have a piece of the fallen Seraphi coding. It's very small, but it's just enough to allow them to be able to allow us and them to be able to share the same hologram, so we can come into their hologram and bring healing. But it's also the same thing that's bringing them into our hologram to create chaos. So we got to ask ourselves, okay, if in this level that you are my hologram that I'm manifesting, why am I doing this? That is the why. Because the part of your template that's manifesting this conflict drama, why it's coming back to Earth on a race level, is because, not because you are that Anunnaki right now. You're a different consciousness. You're connected at source. But you came in on a different stream of consciousness, and so did they. But you were given a portion of their template so you could enter their hologram as healers. And because of that, we've been entering each other's hologram all along. Now, we have, for too long, taken the stance of allowing ourselves to be victimized because humans were very stunned. There was a stun factor when they started to realize something could not have compassion. How could you, I am you, you are me, how could you hate me? How could you want to destroy me and dismember me and take my planet out from under me? There is literally a stun factor of not knowing what to do with oneself in face of conflict like that. When something of a negative polarity hits you so badly that you just get destabilized and you get knocked into polarity yourself. That's what's been happening. The way to heal it is to go into peace, non-judgment. You need to love them too and realize that you do have a nugget of what they are inside of you, but that doesn't mean that you're dominant force. What it means is it gives you the ability to reach out to them with love. And if they're creating a mess in your face and they're serving a hologram purpose, your hologram's telling you, if an Anunnaki comes up and slaps you in the face, what is this telling you? I just manifested myself as the image of an Anunnaki that's in my template. Okay, that must be that thing coming up in my template that was a part of their matrix. What is it telling me? It's telling me there's something I can do right now to create healing that will assist that part of my template and assist this individual of that origin. So you will assist the person as a symbol part of you, but you will also assist the individual. Humans have a healer contract. They came in as healers and guardians. So they will be compelled into situations that need healing and guarding. It's part of our matrix, part of what our template was. So when we get into realizing we don't have to play victim, and really it's not about victimization. You can look at it different. Now I have the opportunity to enter a disharmonic field where I can be a force of healing by going into my center point. I am peace. I am love. By learning how to be love and be peace, you will do what the humans were created to do here, which was come in and bring that vibration to help the others and the whole field to heal. Okay, now I've run over a bit from where I was supposed to be, about 15 minutes, but that's okay. We'll still get to where we need to be. That was good that we went in that direction. I don't go on tangents unless they have something to do with something that's in everybody's template like this. The things he was asking about Anunnaki brought us to the point where I would introduce this beforehand, and I think that's important because I can feel they're moving things in a certain direction with this. But when we come back from our dinner break, we'll explore the fact that, okay, we're not victims in this situation. Now what is the situation? Because if we can approach what's happening and what needs to be done from peace and love and from absolutely not judging the worthiness of being of Anunnaki or Draconian races, you can look at their actions and say, that was an Antichristos action. But that doesn't mean the being is not lovable or valuable or blessed. You still need to treat it as a face of God, but you don't let it run over you in the process. So we'll talk more about that when we get back, and we'll get into the round tables and explain what they mean. Okay? There's not time to do all of the history here, by the way. This would be a whole workshop on just the history. There's 2 charts like this, and each one of them is a period in time with a whole drama. You know what's really strange? I've had experiences where I could see the other half through the mirror. There's a certain level of perception you can flip into, and I've never done it on purpose. It's like it was time for my higher self to show me something, and I would look in the mirror and I would see this reflection in the room behind me, and then all of a sudden it would change. And I would be looking in on its reverse and realizing, oh, that's my double over there. Oh, neat. You know, so that's interesting to have the mirrored doors for our workshop. It gives us a visual representation of what it would mean to have our other selves over there, in their workshop. Okay. Now, all righty. Okay, now. Yeah, 2 of them over there, yeah. All right. Now, what we were talking about right before we left was basically the history, this hidden history, hidden and forbidden by the Anunnaki history, that culminated in the events that we're experiencing right now. Now, time is simultaneous, so this simply means that in every one of these points on this list of things, which is an event in time that took place that led up to this drama, these are actually things that are happening right now in different space-time coordinates that are coming together with our now to form a holographic projection of their kind of finalization, where the whole pattern gets birthed in the matter. We can change a lot of things and put them into a better probability. Because we're dealing with probabilities. If one goes this way, the other will go this way. If one goes up, one will go down. Right now, we're facing a mass situation that after a whole bunch of frequency, which are time-space dramas, holograms that we've moved through, there's going to be the grand hurrah. at the end of this particular block or time cycle, we're in the middle of the Grand Hurrah, the stellar activation cycle. And if we continue with the programming that we've been accepting, we will not have the ending of that we would like. We will have another beginning. We will go back to the beginning of the whole cycle and go through the whole hologram again. We've done it already several times. So at this point, there's a whole history line. This one goes from 798,000 BC basically to about 33,000 BC. There's another one. This is where, at least I can show you where the Leviathan force, the Illuminati force, came into this planet and begin to infiltrate from within to get control of the stargates. They also begin a process of systematically raiding each of the 12 tribes races. The 12 tribes races were the 12 tribes of human races that were put here, one tribe for each stargate. Each tribe and the people that were in the tribe held in their DNA templates extra coding that had to do with their security clearance to run the planetary Templar grids. Now, the Anunnaki races got into incarnation on this planet through the hybridization program. Some of them were fine and stayed loyal to the Emerald Covenant, and they have been persecuted just as much as anybody else by the fallen angelic races. In fact, they're more persecuted because they're looked at as defectors, and they're fallen angelic collectives that they had originally incarnated out of and then decided they didn't want to be a part of anymore, tried to teach them a lesson. So they have had hard lessons too. But then there are the Illuminati races of both Anunnaki and Draconian form, who now are walking around in hybrid human forms that look like our forms, and they're still being subconsciously and subliminally controlled by the fallen angelic collectives that they originally incarnated out of. They look like humans and they think they're humans. They don't know there's a difference, because on this level they're kept ignorant to anything else they're connected to, because as long as they're ignorant, they're not going to make any other choice. They'll just follow the impulses. These are the people who are being given channel clearance, which means they have certain implants that plug them right into the matrices so they can translate their information down. That means that they can be walking spokespersons for the fallen angelic collectives, teaching twisted mechanics, doing this, doing that, to literally mobilize humans, because heck, they're human too, to mobilize humans to run the planetary grids in reverse, because that's what the objective of this whole game has been. They need to get a critical mass of reverse spin. They already have the density 1 planetary Merkaba field spinning 90% or 80% in reverse order. They have 20% to go that they had to wait until the Stargate opening cycle to complete. For them to get control of the halls of Amente, they had to get control of the Merkaba field on parallel Earth and the Merkaba field here. Wait till the stellar activation cycle. Get those both in reverse beforehand. And in a stellar activation cycle, when the natural blending of the timelines between parallel Earth and here would occur through inner Earth, the reversal would throw the crystal pylon temples of inner Earth into reverse spin. It would reverse inner Earth stargates. If they get control of inner Earth stargates, they get control of the crystal pylon temple network and the halls of Amente on a reverse spin, which means they have gained control of this time matrix. So it's a big game that's been going on for a very long time. There's intentions here that are very sad, and this is an ancient as far away from us in vibration where this started. This started back literally 250 billion years ago in our timeline terms. But again, we've cycled through 2 destructions of the human lineage on this planet because of the same conflict. In the time we were seated on Earth, there was the near destruction of Tara and Density 2, 550 million years ago. That's how we all ended up down here after that, trying to repair the damage down here to get things back to where we could repair the damage on Tara and work our ways back out. We're in the middle of a situation where we have huge power at our disposal, but we don't know that we have it. We have the ability just in doing what we were created to do, which is to be at peace and be peace, to be in love and be love. This is what humans were created to do, to be the ones that harmonized. We were the healers and the harmonizers sent in to restore the natural integrity to the energy systems and the beings in this time matrix to help them all. If we can remember what it means to do that, we will be able to heal this. And there's not going to be the wars. There's not going to be all the things that the Anunnaki and Draconian races were both intending and projecting outward, centered on this time period. The whole progression of events, and every one of these is a big story. We don't have time to tell it tonight. Some of these stories are at least capsulized in the Templar manuals for anybody that got them. They're capsulized in there so you get an idea of what these time periods mean in relation to now. There's more of an in-depth explanation of the time periods in the book that's coming out, hopefully by the end of November, the Forbidden Book, as I call it, the Forbidden Testaments of Revelation. But the important thing to realize about this timeline, this is the set of vibrational pictures, or vibrational patterns that became living pictures for our race as we move to get to this point of living vibrational picture. All right? These are the events that took place in the timeline that Earth is connected to right now. We had the infiltration of what began as the Eluli-Levi races that were intended to become, again, Christed races. So the Anunnaki and Draconian races had a way out of their fallen angelic matrices. Because literally, if you incarnated out of a fallen angelic matrix, you did not have the D12 coding. It's called the Christos spark. You did not have the Christos spark at fetal integration. So you could only go up so high, you couldn't access D12 yourself. You needed a host matrix, which means somebody, one of the consciousness collectives from D12 or higher, had to make a bridge down to you and give you new coding to plug you into something that would give you at least a temporary suspension of the D12 field so you could get out of the densities. And it has been a veil of sorrow, particularly for the Anunnaki races and the Draconian races that wanted to get out of the Antichristos agenda. Once they were in it, it was very difficult to get out. This progression of events literally has changed the face of what human history is. It's like somebody put in a holographic insert of a false history. So our race would think that we were a certain thing, so we would behave in a certain way. And it is a false history, so we've literally been manufacturing somebody else's hologram progressively. We have managed to build the Anunnaki Palladian Orion model of civilization that is built upon competition, and it is built upon warfare, and it is built upon hatred, and it is built upon fear. It's built on survival of the fittest. That's not the natural way the universe works. Once upon a time, we had what was called the Lyran-Syrian model that was the dominant force on this planet. That changed in 25,500 BC. That's when this place was infiltrated and invaded, and progressively the Palladian Orion model has been forced into our hologram. What will be our victory as a species is getting ourselves back to the point, or up to the point of vibration, where we get to walk the hologram again of what it meant to be part of the Lyran-Syrian model of civilization, which was built on love and cooperation, sharing of knowledge, healing of things that needed to be healed. It was the Christos agenda. It was the Christos way of beings interacting with each other. And it was the way that the Emerald Covenant, the Founders' Emerald Covenant that was made so long ago, 950 billion years ago, in our time, in relation to time here, is when the Emerald Covenant was started for this time matrix. It was an agreement of coevolution, loving coevolution, that was meant to keep this time matrix in balance so we could experience polarity in a gentle way, enjoy the benefits of it, learn things about ourselves. But it was not in this time matrix meant to go to such extremes that several times this time matrix has almost imploded because polarity and consciousness has got so out of balance. We're at a cusp of a new beginning or a new ending, and they're all the same. Beginnings and endings are all the same point. We can either repeat the problems, the patterns, and they are problems if you have a desire or a preference to return to source in wholeness and awareness of what you're doing, or to return to source as space dust. Either way you're going to return, but when you return to source as space dust, you actually return to source but stay in the time matrix. You don't do the full expansion out. You end up as particles here. You're still in source. You're not separate from source. And other things you will be the creative ground that other things are put in, other things that are evolving and accreting their memory and becoming the wholeness of source, not just residing within source as fragments. It's definitely a preference. All right? It's not all neutral. If it was all neutral, we'd have a static universe, and we wouldn't have had a projection in the first place. There is an advantage, and source has a preference. This is what a lot of people don't realize, especially if they follow twists that have been put here by Anunnaki races. Supposedly, source doesn't carry the weight, just accepts it all and loves it all, and it's all fine, so source does nothing. That is not the way it works. Source does love all. What source does, because source loves all, is when it sees imbalance coming to a point where source has an intention for a time matrix or a system or a being or a person. And that intention is getting so twisted and so far bent away from its original that it will never be fulfilled, and the being or the consciousness that was born to fulfill that intention is going to be turned back to fragments rather than to its fulfillment. Source knows, because Source feels us, what it will feel like to that being to be ripped apart from the inside out. It knows the longing that particles feel when they think they're all alone or when they experience themselves as random. Source has within itself the force of chaos and the force of order. The force of chaos was created for one reason. You cannot have the force of manifestation without polarity. The force of chaos was created as you needed to create polarity. You needed the negative and positive charge electrical particles just to set the whole projection of hologram in motion. Chaos was not created as the natural state of the universe. It was a byproduct of the original intention, which was to experience the joyful playground of beings being able to know themselves and experience themselves. It was originally a very safe place and comfortable place to be. You could explore things, but it was kind of like exploring it almost like on a computer screen where, oops, that one got shot, well, that's okay, because you know death isn't real, that kind of thing. There was an innocence and a harmlessness to being in manifestation here in the original intention. That has changed and has bent so far from its original intention that, again, we're faced with a situation that if something wasn't done, if intervention wasn't brought here on Source's behalf and as Source, representing the original intention. We're all Source, including the Anunnaki and the ones who pretend they don't know Source right now. However, if they continue to hold the balance of power, the result of that is going to be that before the end of the next cycle, which is a cycle of vibration that becomes a planetary time cycle, this planet was going to explode in 2976 AD. If intervention was not given in the stellar activation cycle, it would have not made it to the next stellar activation cycle to fix it. It would not have been brought back into balance, and it would have begun a process, a chain reaction. This would have ended up as a phantom planet that would progressively have allowed the infiltration of the halls of Amente, which would have culminated in this entire time matrix becoming a phantom time matrix cut off from the grids. That's just a lot of work for Source, because Source will not simply leave parts of its consciousness scattered for eternity. Source will always create another part of itself, another race to come in to assist fallen matrices, to help to create another evolutionary pattern for beings that lost their template and got lost in the time matrix structure, where they're lost in dimensionalization so they can expand back up into their wholeness. It is a huge... Source feels. You know how we feel? Well, Source feels too. Source isn't immune to feeling. It's not indifferent and so detached that it doesn't care what happens here. Source does care very much, because every feeling that we have, Source feels, because we are Source. And this part of us communicates back to the larger expanded part of us. So healing is the primary nature of Source, the desire to have an experience that you can explore polarity, but still within the safety and the knowing and the love of the ground of understanding your wholeness. That's been changed in this time matrix, as it has been in others. Source has experienced what it means to lose parts of its own consciousness and have them implode and have to go through all sorts of things. It's like having your inner child go into a temper tantrum inside of yourself, and it just drags your energy all over the place, and yes, it affects you. It affects how you feel. It affects what other things you can create, because it's creating a blockage in your own energy. It works in your mind that way, in your consciousness here. It works in Source's consciousness that way too. So we are on a healing mission. The human beings always have been. That's what our intention had been, was to come in and heal the things that were going out of balance here. When we look at this history that is just starting to be revealed to us, it's amazing. When we get through this point, we get up to several attempts of takeover. We get into a nearly complete infiltration of the hybrid lines, where at this point we have all sorts of people in human bodies on the planet that half of them aren't human. But the percentages are not as large as they would like them to be. There was a reason why certain twists on spiritual teachings were given, such as the procreation issues dealt with in what's now called the Bible. How Catholic people are taught that contraception is wrong. that you should, women end up pregnant over and over and over again when they're not supposed to have a choice. God decides that for you. There was a race for critical mass. Who could get the most of their souls incarnate on the planet? Because whoever was going to run the Merkabahs at critical mass was going to be the ones that would be able to be the guardians of this Templar. So certain rules were put in by the fallen angelics, twists on original teachings that taught men to suppress women so women could be forced into being breeders, so they could get more and more of their consciousness into human form on the planet for this grand hurrah period of time, this their activation cycle. This has affected every one of us deeply and intimately, all through the last 20,000 years. Now, when we got through this point, this was a progressive infiltration of the hybrid lines, which was, an opportunity was seen where you could get yourself on a planet you wanted to take over. That opportunity was used, and it was used well. They're very creative and they're very intelligent. Now, that went into this scenario, the progression of the Atlantean conspiracy, because this took us up to a period. So the cloister races, the human races that had been evolving here for a long time, the 12 tribes, they were the ones that created the Atlantean civilization and the Lemurian civilization and all of the ancient civilizations that even came before that. These civilizations were being progressively overrun by the hybrid races that now held fallen angelic consciousness. They were being infiltrated because the Iluli-Levi race line had the ability to direct procreate, live procreate. They did not have to go to a laboratory to make a hybrid. That was their big opportunity. They could get themselves on the planet and they could start hijacking 12-tribe human evolution, because they wanted codes that were in the DNA templates of the 12 tribes. The 12 tribes human races hold the key codes to the planetary Templar, the security locks, that you can't access the grids unless you have them in your DNA. The Anunnaki didn't have them in their DNA. Even the hybrids that had part of the strand content of the humans did not have them in their DNA until stage 5 of the hybridization program, because our guys didn't give up on the hybridization program. There were still lots of decent beings that were evolving well and wanted to stay in the Emerald Covenant, so they couldn't just abandon them because other portions of them had been hijacked. So we've literally been, this progressive power struggle has been building. Now, in 50,000 BC, there was an attempt to blow up Stargate 12 here. Stargate 12 and its Q site. 12, I believe, is in France, and its Q site is in Kauai, Hawaii. The Q site was what they went after, because if you can blow the Q site, you not only blow up the Stargate it's connected to, you'll also blow into the portal that connects that Q site to the Crystal Pylon Temple in the Earth. So you blow your way through the vortex. So Lemuria, which was once a continent that was over in the Pacific Ocean. It was kind of a crescent-shaped continent that came around. It had a very large interior sea, so it wasn't like as solid like Atlantis was. Atlantis was a big, solid continent. It was bigger, I think it was bigger in landmass than the North American continent. But Lemuria went down when they used the Gruol point here, what used to be on this site in Sarasota, Florida. The Templar was active then. They had the gates open enough where they could run through the crystalline technologies. They had massive crystals here. They could direct the frequency of the stargates. And the temples fell under the wrong hands. They fell under the hands of several competing groups of the Anunnaki hybrid races, and they took out the Q-Site 12, and Lemuria went down. What's left of it is now several island nations south of the Hawaiian Islands and the Hawaiian Islands area. And that was not that long ago. That was 50,000 BC. By 28,000 BC, the first Atlantean Holocaust happened, where a very similar thing for the same reasons, territorial dominion, where stargates were located. Same type of thing was attempted. These stories of the Lemurian and Atlantean Holocaust are in Voyager's Volume 2, Secrets of Amenti, the one that was published in 99, and that's been amended a bit, so the new version's coming out because they sold out of those, but the new one is coming out from the publisher. It should be out within the month, I would think, because we already submitted all the stuff for it. So if you want, those stories are more detailed in the first Voyager's books that came out. Then there was a whole thing, 25,500 BC, the Lucifer Rebellion. Now, if I try to go into the whole story from here, we'll be here to next week. The Lucifer Rebellion was a period of time when the intergalactic races of the Anunnaki decided, even though they're fighting with each other all the time, that they'd unite because there was an opportunity to come in. There was enough Anunnaki presence on the planet in the form of hybrids that if they could convince them that you're not them, you're not one of them, you're one of us, that they could get in and take over the Templar. They tricked the Atlanteans. They brought the Palladian Nibiruans, started it, the ones from the planet Nibiru that used to be part of this galaxy. They had a whole plan that involved the Sirius A Anunnaki groups and some groups from Arcturus and numerous interplanetary systems, including Alpha and Omega Centauri. That's where you got the Alpha Omega order of the Melchizedeks. They decided that if they could get this grid set up in the planet, it would give them final control over getting the halls of Amenti. They could reverse the Merkabahs on here in parallel, and when a stellar activation cycle happened, put them together, they reversed the halls of Amenti, they got them. That was the plan. They got the grid put in because they tricked the Atlantean people into here's a wonderful new technology, it'll give you new ways to use the power of your Templar. Look at this, oh, you have more power? They were so impressed. Because at this point, there had been such digression among the hybrid races because there was all sorts of teachings, twisted teachings, competing teachings, just like there is now. And it was hard to figure out what to believe. And the Anunnaki were like, oh, well, I guess we are Anunnaki more than human, aren't we? Because as far as DNA goes, yes, they were. They had a loyalty thing. And they allowed this grid to be put in. And then they found out what it would do. There was a pole shift that took place in that period. And it would have been a lot worse, and we'd still be under ice if it hadn't been for the crystal pylon temple networks. Because if they can catch it with those, the frequencies, if they can turn them on at full blast in inner Earth, they can grab the Earth grids frequency-wise. They can grab them with electromagnetic energy and hold them relatively stable. That's what they did in that period, so it didn't get too bad. But there still was an ice period that came after that as a result. So our ice ages, all this stuff, it's all plugged into this history line. But this is where 25,500 BC, the problem that we're getting rid of today, was put in. It was a crystal grid network that was put in at the location of Stonehenge because of the location of Stonehenge being on a particular set of ley lines, the 1111 ley line. It was a way to get, now the 1111 ley line connected with the 11th Stargate and the 11th Q site, and it ran the highest coding other than 12 through the whole planetary Templar. That was the place they were going to get control of Earth's other stargates from. If they could get the 11 grid lines and the Gruol point, the control point for the shields, they had it mastered. So that was their intention. This is how they did it. I showed this one to you the other day. I'm not going to describe it heavily because I'm still trying to make to probably push it to 9:30 at the latest. Hello, Michael. He's back. But this is how they created the mess that we're living right now. How in the world do you reverse a planet's Merkaba, for goodness sakes? You don't just go up to it and whack it. You know what I mean? And planets are big things. You know what I mean? You think about the technology it would take to be able to do something like that, and you have an idea of the level of intelligence they're dealing with. Okay, just basic intelligence, being able to figure things out, intellectual knowledge. They are extremely intellectually intelligent, but they just don't have any cognition of heart stuff because they're mutated and their consciousness can't hold it. They created it through taking the natural orbital alignments of the Merkabahs from our Merkaba at the Sun, the way it plugs into the natural planetary Merkabahs, because at a certain point, Nibiru, before 25,500 BC, certain groups of Anunnaki there had been Emerald Covenant for quite a long time, and they had petitioned for more fair treatment on being active members of the security team. They wanted their own gate to guard. Because the founders' races are fair, they had a track record at that point of doing well, and there was a whole group of Anunnaki races on Nibiru that had been doing really well, and they were bringing the Lyran-Syrian model of civilization to Nibiru. They were given a trust. They were called the Council of Nine, and then above them was the Council of 12. These are some of the names in the channeling movement. They were entrusted with Ashtar Command. These were the Palladian Nibiruan Anunnaki that were given and entrusted as equal members in the planetary security systems. They were given not governing control, but protective control. The founders always keep governing control in case anything goes wrong with the gates so they can intervene directly. But they were given localized governance over Stargate 4, which is the solar gate that connects Nibiru to the higher dimensions, it connects Earth to the higher dimensional fields, and they were invaded. They were invaded by other Anunnaki races who took over the planet. That's when they decided to do the United Anunnaki thing. Now they had control because they had their own set of crystal pylon temples that matched the ones that were here. They could change some of the frequencies coming through the Gate 4 Stargate, which means they would change some of the emissions that were being sent down through the solar spirals. That was a technology they knew they could exploit, and they did. Once that was done, and they were able to, from Nibiru, interact with and begin to alter the coding on Stargate 4. They literally harnessed a piece of a planet, which I won't get into that story because I know what planet it was, and I know, but that's a whole other book. All right, they harnessed a piece of a planet that had been destroyed in other earlier wars that had almost equal mass to their planet Nibiru. It allowed them to create an artificial orbit, to literally throw Nibiru into pole shift, out of orbit, and then catch it at a different orbit. So they could set up a patrol station where they could come in every 3,657 point something years, 0.8 years. Either the planet or the battle star, which was placed on the other, like if you drew a line through, if this was Nibiru out here on this orbit, this would be the battle star. So when Nibiru, the planet, went out into orbit up around Sirius A into density 2, the battle star would come in as a patrol mechanism. Now, from what? From this lineup, they were able to transmit frequency from the battle star, bounce it through Nibiru, through the solar gate, and anchor it down into Earth at the 1111 site. That created, and has been here since, a standing wave pattern that has been being controlled by Nibiru as they've been progressively feeding their hologram and their information and their control mechanisms into the grids. What it has done is called a checkerboard matrix because it blocks out part. If you have 12 ley lines on the planet, which are the energy distribution lines that run between stargates, they're the vertical ones, the main ones that feed everything else. They literally reversed the coding, the fire letter sequences, on parts of each of them. So they would run some of them straight, some of them crooked, some of them straight, some of them reverse. And it literally created a mess out of the grids, and that's what it did to the DNA of everything on this planet. It created a checkerboard mess in the DNA. So this is the problem we've been dealing with. The problem has created amazing things in terms of biology. What it did on the personal level for people. Now this is a diagram of the 12-strand DNA pattern. There's just a 12-strand. You'd have like several of those, 12, 24, 36, or 48 if you're an indigo. You'd have, other sets of 12. What this pattern did, this checkerboard matrix transmission, standing wave anchored at Stonehenge, connected to Wormwood, the Sun, and Nibiru. What it did was transmit frequency that blocked the D2, D3, and D1 ley line grids and stargates here. It reversed part of their coding. Part of them had run right, part of them had run in reverse. So the natural communication could not take place. What it did in the DNA was take strands 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and I tried to scribble it on here with a pen when they showed me this over dinner. Strand 1, it shut down first of all in 1, 2, and 3 all of the coding. Now this is a DNA strand template, a diagram of it. There would be 12 little black circles and 12 little white circles on each one of these strands. What that is are the base tone codes and the overtone codes. The base tone codes would become the meons, and the overtone codes would become the myons, and the overtone codes would become the dions. That is the natural structure of the DNA template. First of all, they chopped off the activation. They blocked the activation of all of this part of the strands, which took out 8 out of the 12 codes. So only 4 on each strand were communicating with each other. Then they reversed a third of those. Some would run the right fire letters, some would run reverse fire letters. This created a mess in the chromosome structure of the DNA. It mutated us, it mutated the hybrids, it mutated every other life form on this planet. It's been running through the grids, and one really interesting thing that it did was the differences. By the time stage 5 of the Anunnaki hybridization program had gone through, the hybrid races had 5 strand templates of the human imprint, running in the natural order of a human imprint, which was the forward order fire letters, and they had their own 11 strands reversed. The 5 human strands, were starting the process of straightening out the 5 Anunnaki strands. What they did by using this grid was they blocked things, reversed the human imprint, portions of it, so actually the Anunnaki imprint started to reverse the human imprint. They were creating a super race that had the ability to run Earth's Templar, because with that human strand came some of the coding to run Earth's grids. All right? What it did to us was chop off the places where our DNA was significantly different, aren't showing anymore. Our bodies ended up mutating into what looked more like them than what looked like us to begin with. The race we are called now is the Homo sapien II. The Homo sapien II was not intended. It was the byproduct of a forced raid on the genetic lines here. The Homo sapien I was what the Anunnaki hybrids were. We were angelic humans, which was a completely different race strain. And the only similarity between the two was the fact that we had contributed DNA to the others to help them to evolve. Suddenly we found ourselves mutating because the coding, what they tried to do was create one race solidarity, one world order, we're all one, we're all the same. Because it's in the differences where the freedom lies for both races. If they wanted to enslave their own down here to get control of the Templar to run it later and enslave us, so they could just literally walk in and do it, they had to block out the memory on all of them and lower the intelligence level where they couldn't get higher information in, turn off the psychic perception so they couldn't see what was going on in the D4 frequency bands, because that's where a lot of the action was taking place. And they literally have mutated 2 species. It's called transposition of race identity, and it's a genetic maneuver that's done by blocking certain codes in one. If you have 2 species that have 2 different types of DNA, let's say one has 12 strands, one only has 4, but the first 4 are similar. If you block out all but those 4, and then block out the things that are dissimilar in the others, you get 2 races that actually, 2 species that actually begin to mutate into one. And that's what's been done here, which means we're going to start to change shape once we progressively. Our race is moving in an evolutionary line that will take us back to what we originally were. We were much taller, and we were immortal. What it did was, it literally chopped our lifespan down to nothing. Humans used to be immortal. They went from that to, when the first codes were put in, to about an 800-year lifespan. That's why in the Bible they talk about very old people. And it went from there into the tiny little lifespans that we have now. They made it so the body kind of kills itself. From as soon as it's born, it starts a process of self-consumption on the inside because of the way the chemicals and the chromosomes work. And if we were, that would keep us circulating on planet, but we couldn't do very much in the short lifespans that we had. Our bodies would fall apart around us, and that's what's been happening. But it's happening to the hybrids too. We all were succumbing to this, the plants, the animals. Now, this mutation did several things to our chakra systems. Our chakra system. Okay, this is the chakra diagram that we have in both of those course manuals. On chakras 1, 2, and 3, they would normally have a communication system. There wouldn't be any polarity bands in between here, where there would be natural communication between the D1 chakra, that is really the subatomic consciousness. It would be able to communicate clearly to the D2 part of your consciousness, that is known as the emotional body level, the elements in your body, the water molecules, those parts of you that are you. They're actually part of you. They're your hologram. They're part of your hologram here, but when you bring them back, they're part of your consciousness manifesting in that form to form the rest of you. Here, what's called the mental body, that's your D3 level of myonic self. What this did was create bands of polarity resistance. Instead of having electromagnetic, where current could flow, current of communication, it allowed a small current to flow, because you would have totally killed the form if you didn't allow that. It wouldn't have been able to live in density 1. It left a little stream of communication between these chakras, shut down again. Out of 12 frequency bands in each, 12 sub-frequency bands, it shut out all but 4. So you only have 4 levels of the chakras working. Then it reversed the spin on a third of them, on a third of each of those that were remaining, which gives us absolute chaos. It separates the levels of consciousness where we don't even know where's those feelings of emotion coming up from. What are they? What is this body I'm walking around in? It has done amazing things here. One of the interesting things that it has done, and this gets into the history, this is a whole other workshop, the history of the Bible and the Christ story. If you want to know what belief program is running out there, that is a total implant, that is meant to hijack your consciousness for as long as possible into projecting out the Anunnaki scenario, is the crucifixion of Christ. Because Christ was not crucified, Christ chose ascension, that he orchestrated himself because he had these teachings, he was translating these teachings, but the Christ story was hijacked. The Christ story was almost a tongue-in-cheek joke, the way it was done. It was done for a reason. It was done because if you're planning at the next star activation cycle to take over a planet, and you want to seed a whole bunch of history that leads up to a fake story that when you come in, you're not going to have any resistance from the people who are there because they think you're the savior coming back that they taught you to expect to come. They hijacked the whole story, got rid of most of Christ's teachings, most of John the Baptist's teachings, most of Miriam's teachings, and all the people who were really working the Christos mission. And they superimposed 20% distortion here, 20% here, maybe 40% here. People, any programs, and think about it, who's endorsing the Christ crucifixion story now? Not just the typical Christian religions, but look at the channeling movements. Who isn't? You have the people with their Mother Mary visions. You have the people, they're getting Palladian holographic inserts, contacts with Mother Mary. You have very benign, seemingly helpful courses, like the Course in Miracles, like the Urantia book. These teachings, any of those teachings that are telling you that Christ died on the cross, are preparing this race for somebody who says he's Christ to come in on a spaceship with the Anunnaki saying, "Hi, we're your creator gods, come with us. We came here to save the planet. Sorry, your governments can't stay anymore because they're not doing a good job, but we'll help you save the planet." This is part of a sabotage, all right? The real crucifixion of Christ was this. This is why it was tongue-in-cheek joke for the Anunnaki. They think this is hysterical. You know, the whole story about the stab wound and the crown of thorns and the nails in the hands and the feet. This grid shows you your axiotonal line grids in your body. These are the lines that run from your template that begin the process of bringing myons up into more full particle manifestation. These are the energy feed lines in your body. And they're all supposed to be open. If they're all open, that's how you get all of yourself into the physical hologram, where you can know yourself as God and have those godlike powers. What the grid distortions, the checkerboard matrix has done, is block off, literally, look at this, 4, 7, 10, and 11, all the way through on those sides. It's amazing we still even have the left side of our body left because of all the blockages. If it wasn't for the fact that they only reversed part of each one, the whole body form would have fallen apart and died. You wouldn't be able to manifest. But they left part of the grids open, just enough to keep the life force coming through, and the rest was reversed or shut down. What it did was literally sever. Now these correspond to your strand levels. These correspond to the dimensions of consciousness. You will be able to know you have that cognition, that perception level. Right? It changed. We used to have much larger hearts. The physical organ would be much larger. It was much stronger. It had a much slower rate. Breathing rates were slower. All of a sudden, we're breathing real fast, and our hearts beat really fast, and our lifespans are really, really tiny. All of this stuff is happening because the chromosomes are damaged, because the DNA template's damaged, because the axiotonal lines are blocked. We've been crucified. The inner Christos, the D12 frequency that we have the ability to embody with our own inner Christ, which is what Jesus taught, has been crucified by the checkerboard matrix. And we have literally here in the spleen, this is one of the first things you might start experiencing when you start to get your DNA activating, is spleen pain. Because all of these little black dots, they don't belong there. They're blockages and reversals. So when that higher frequency starts to come in and transduce, the spleen is, part of its function when it's functioning right is supposed to assist in harmonizing the higher frequency energies with the lower frequency energies. So you end up with spleen issues, you end up with all sorts of pains in the legs, pains in the arms, pains in the heart area, you can get lung issues from all this. This would affect heart, lungs. This was the crucifixion, and up here is the real mess. There's your crown of thorns. Literally, the ones on this side of the body, the 4, 7, 10, 1, and 5 lines, are blocked or reversed, which is literally totally altering brainwave function. It's making a division in the consciousness that would be the male and female. It's making an extreme division in the consciousness where it's extremely difficult to bring the two fields together into a unified perception. So this was a real crucifixion story. This is how they crucified Christ. And they think it's hysterical that we run around worshiping a guy on a cross who was never really on the cross. It's a symbol that when you see a crucifix, realize this is a symbol of your death as a God self here. But it's only a symbolic death, that you have the ability to pull out those nails, climb down off the cross, and open up the things, throw the crown of thorn out the windows, and say, excuse me, I've had enough of that drama. All right? And that's what the Azarite Temple is about. We're bringing the teachings that Christ was bringing here, and these teachings are much older than the Christ drama. These are the ancient founders' teachings, and we're resetting the original truth, the original template. That's the work that we do. So I wanted to see what this thing has done to our body. Now I'll show you what it looks like. This is interesting. This is where my little black spider diagram is going to come in a minute. Okay. Now, this map, these are all diagrams taken from the Templar course book, by the way. This diagram shows you the ley lines, first of all. Whoops, that's interesting. I put it on straight and it looks crooked when it gets up there. Okay. All right, these verticals are the main axiotonal lines. Some of them are actually double. An axiotonal line is if you have a stargate. See, that's the circle. It has an axis of, the first one is the most powerful line that comes out. That will be its vertical line, okay? It's literally running vertically with the globe. It will have one that sticks straight up, that literally comes off the globe and connects to the planetary and solar Merkabas. And it has a series of, it's a 6-axis, where 6 lines coming out, and then there's a smaller 6-axis also that comes out. So you literally have 12 ley lines radiating, 12 lines radiating out from each stargate. That's where the planetary grids come from. They're just like those lines in our body. The verticals are the axiotonals. From those come horizontals and diagonals where crossovers happen. It's the ones that are on this angle, the straight up and down angle, that become the main feed lines, the axiotonals. All of the other ones, the diagonals and other ones that run over horizontal, aren't considered axiotonal. They're considered ley lines, where they don't carry quite as much energy or frequency. It's the axiotonals. If you're going to control the grids, those are the ones you go after. And that's what they did. All right, this is basically the placement. These are different places. All these things are little temples. These are little temples that they're anchoring this stuff at right now. But the main anchoring point was here, which was a place called Lohas Atlantis, where Gate 11 was. Gate 11 and QSat 11 were very close to each other on the 11-11 ley line, and they used that. Stonehenge is right on the 11-11 ley line. They used Stonehenge to put the reverse codes in right there. So the frequency would come in from QSite 11, normal, it would hit the reversal and transmit and open Gate 11 on reverse when it came time for it to open. It was, and this is the time. This time period was when this was all supposed to come to be. What this mess looks like, this is the spider. It's an 8-pointed geomancy grid that sends out frequency through the ley lines and across them, forming a really bizarre configuration of energy. Now, I try to get these lined up so you can see, because they're overlays. They will, if I get them lined up, line up with each other. All right. Okay. They emanate out from the Stonehenge grid, and they literally cut across all of the ley lines, the natural ley lines, the natural grid lines, all of the lines that are carrying energy through the planet. What these frequencies are doing, because there's a standing columnar wave, an invisible sound wave that's been holding this in, is it is blocking everything it crosses. It blocks and sends a partial reversal to. It's turned our planetary grids into a checkerboard, into a mess, and that's what's turned our DNA into a mess. Now, the anchoring rod has been Stonehenge. Last month, we went to England and Ireland and did the work there, and we started the process of what's called the Christos realignment mission. The only way we can actually have the ability to make a difference with this is because we had a divine commission. Humans and indigos have a divine commission. They have the Stargate key codes in their DNA template as frequency points, as Mayan and Dian information, that when it runs into the planetary grids, it will trigger the opening of security seals on the grid, so we have the ability to run and straighten out the frequencies that are being misrun through the grids. If we didn't have D12 frequency available to us, because the Guardians did a whole bunch of interesting things through the higher stargates to at least get some of that available, so it would be able to anchor here. That was a great celebration. We helped with that, but we had no idea the significance of what we were asked to do at that time. I get a feeling this might be one of those workshops too, where everybody just kind of got together for 5/5/2000, and they just seemed to want to come down to visit me in Sarasota. I was like, all right. Nobody knew why, and I didn't get any information until everybody got there. Then all of a sudden, we didn't tell you something, but we'd like you to know, this is the Templar Rebirth Day party. What? I hadn't even heard the word Templar from them yet. And the information started, and we were given the mechanics to run the security codes and to help to anchor on a 12-code pulse instead of the 10-code that's been running through this planet for 200,000 years. We could finally anchor the full D12 spectrum. And we did, but we had no idea how important it was, or the fact that it hadn't happened in over 200,000 years when we did it. There was just this little group of us, okay, well, what do we do next? Okay, we'll do that. Well, we have the DNA connection to the planetary grids. Let me see if I have this one here. Through something called the Planetary Biofeed Interface System. If I can find that chart here. The Planetary Biofeed Interface System is the part of your body that holds the Cathara grid that we talked about before. And it connects directly to the planet's Cathara grid. Remember that 12-pointed grid that I showed you the other day? It's also the Stargate map grid. Well, our 12 points of our body that run the main frequency connect directly into the planet through the planetary core. Here's what it looks like. It is the Planetary Biofeed Interface System. When we run round tables, this is what we're doing. We are activating this connection. All right? Our Cathara grid, and there's one I'll show you how it runs through the body. Our Cathara grid runs through our body, and it runs frequency in a distorted fashion right now. But if we open the 12th chakra below our feet and activate our Maharic shield and bring up Maharata current, it temporarily opens the Cathara grid, reverses the reversals we have, and gives us a few moments of hologram where we have our integrity back. It's not enough to hold in the hologram, where all of a sudden we get our normal body patterns back and stuff, but it's enough to run D12 frequency or higher into the planetary grids in nanosecond bursts. Now, let's see, there's one I want to show you. I want to show you where internal Cathara grid is. For the people who haven't seen the Cathara programs. I think this one is it. Okay. All right. These are the points in your body that hold the grid. Okay, so literally this is where the frequency comes in. When you begin to activate your DNA by using Merkaba and using the D12 frequency, that technique, activating the Maharic seal, that is the only way you can get Maharic frequency into your body right now. That's why it's so important. It is the base thing. If you're going to do any real energy work, you need to activate the Maharic shield, and that is the technique you use to do it. You activate the Maharic shield. That's the technique that Phil and Mac ran, Marianne, the first day when you were here. It is in those books, and I don't know if we had any more. Is there anybody that doesn't have a paper copy of that someplace? Because we've been giving that to anybody that we could find. Okay. Oh, good. You all have a Maharic seal? Good. All right. That is how you get D12 frequency into your body. Without that, you still carry that black spider mutation. It's called the Nibiru, an 8-pointed star configuration. All right. You still have that in you. As soon as you run a Maharic seal, you temporarily have suspended that program by overlaying D12 frequency in the right order. So temporarily, your fire letters in your DNA turn back to their natural order. At least long enough for you to run some bursts of energy. Every time you do it, you can hold it more. This is where we get the Merkaba involved. The more you use the Merkaba while you're running the Maharatic current, the more you're imbuing that right fire letter sequences into all the things that are distorted. But if you want to run a rainbow roundtable to affect the grids, you can't even access the grids without the D12 Maharatic current. That's why the Guardians have had such a hard time, and the angelic humans have had such a hard time trying to fix this problem before this time. The whole Christ drama was about the team that came in, the team of indigos that came in to try to get rid of this grid by activating some of the D12 frequency early if they could through the Ark of the Covenant, which is a portal passage that comes down under Giza. They tried to use that to bring D12 frequency in so they could release the Nibiruan grid in preparation for this time frame now. But they were attacked by a group called the Hyksos. The Hyksos were the hybrid super race that came up from Atlantis. The Hyksos were the ones that did the exodus out of Egypt. It wasn't the Hebrews, but they took over the Hebrew races. And the Hebrews are angelic humans. They were one of the angelic human 12 tribes, guardians of the gates. And what was done was when any of the Anunnaki groups would come over, the hybrid groups would go into a culture, and they would raid, and they would rape, and they would pillage, and they would take portions of it and say, okay, we're the bosses now. You either follow or you don't. If you don't, you die. That kind of thing. Now, there were choices that the angelic humans had to make. They could hold their ground and get wiped out, but there were ones that realized, they were guided to not do that. If you have to lose your memory of who you are, because we were losing our race identity, where our children were being taught that they were something else. They were being fed Anunnaki, history. They were being fed Anunnaki mechanics. But if we didn't stay on planet, and we let our species become extinct here because we kept standing our ground and getting ourselves killed over and over and over, there would have been nobody to run the grids on the right spin when it came time for here. So we have suffered all sorts of the illusion of victimization in order to fulfill our job of staying here to assist our original commission of guarding the stargates and helping the Anunnaki and the Draconian races to heal. And because we have that little piece, little code of theirs in with our DNA template, we will keep bringing the drama back until we succeed in assisting them to heal, so they can be brought back into the family of the one source. So this is a very long drama, but there is such a thing as mercy, and there is such a thing as when one big cycle is done, you've accomplished something by the end of that cycle, and the team who was sent in is usually dragging themselves through it by then. They're so run down by the hologram and what they've had to go through that they could use a real nice vacation anywhere but here. So there's a changing of the guard that takes place. The guard that's been here, that's the indigos right now, is the same one that's been here, literally, since the humans were seated here 25 million years ago. Some of us got out when cycle 1 went bad, where it was like, time to change this guard, I'm going to be flattened if I don't get out. So there were waves where some would leave and others would come in. Directly, the ascended masters would directly come in human form. This wave has been here. Literally, these are the old-timers. Right now, the ones that are in indigo form are the original committee back. They had a little bit of break. Some of them got out at least up into the higher densities a little bit, so they could hang out and regain their... you get very disoriented down here with that checkerboard matrix, and even like indigos can kind of go, who am I? I don't know. Where did I come from? I don't remember. And that's really surprising for an indigo. You're not used to that state of consciousness. And it's like you come into a baby body here and lights out. You are lost in space. So we are at a point of the changing of the guard beginning to happen. We're this close to fulfilling what this particular cycle of indigos had done to help, assist in the healing. And the mission that we're on now is to, first of all, get this grid dysfunctional by healing it. Okay? You don't destroy it, you heal it. You run D12 frequency through these little crystal pylon temple networks, little fake ones that they have that they're running the Nibiruan code through, heal them, heal those crystals, and they become your best friends. They have an amplification network all over this planet. They can be used to spread D12 frequency and higher. They can be used to create a protection, a Maharic protection seal on a planetary level. So what we're doing is there's a series of missions we are going on. That's why I went to England and Ireland. There's several missions that we're going on, and anybody that wants to come is welcome to join us. And I usually give a workshop, and a lot of times there's people that never heard this stuff before, but by the time they get through understanding it, they say, oh yeah, I'll do that. And this is where roundtables come in. Roundtables are the antidote. Roundtables are the way that, first of all, you get your frequencies opened in your own body. Then you do salutations, which are your personal thing when you're not with a group of people. You can do them with a group of people, but you don't have to. Where you're just learning to spin your Merkaba the right way, which is helping you hold more and more current, which is giving you some power to work with when you start to use it for grid work. Plus, it's helping you heal very rapidly. It's helping to get rid of the checkerboard mutation in your body. When you do the salutations, even once or twice a week, it will help to sustain where the grids right now are trying to throw your Merkaba back in the opposite direction to put the checkerboard mutation back in your DNA. Every time you get it out, it comes back again. The more you do these, putting your Merkaba the right way, the more the D12 frequency will hold and stay in your body. It also gives you more power in working with the currents when you're doing roundtable. Now, the advantage of roundtables they're twofold. One, they are the means to access the planetary grids, because we can only access a certain level. No one of us has all the codes that can go in and access the whole grid. Each one of us carries a piece. When indigos and humans, they're the ones with the codes, the security codes, assemble, and they put their bodies in very specific relationships to each other, and they activate their Merkabas on the right spin rates, and they begin to run frequency. They cannot just run the D12 frequency, they can run primal light field frequency and the primal sound current, which is the inaudible sound wave. That is the thing that will literally reset things the fastest way possible. Every time we run these things, we not only assist the planet by literally putting in the right coding to override the wrong coding that's been in there. Progressively, we're clearing the Earth's grids, restoring them to the Christos template, doing it. But every time we run these frequencies into a roundtable, we're healing ourselves, because the fact that what we're doing is we're having our own Merkabas going. So we're sealed in our own Merkaba. We're not taking other people's stuff on. But our Merkabas working all together in those angles to each other create a huge Merkaba. That huge Merkaba, when it gets fast enough, has the ability to anchor the primal sound field current, and it stays as a standing wave like an anchoring rod. Those anchoring rods of primal sound will stop this place from shifting when we start to go through the 3-day particle conversion period. 3-day particle conversion period is a lot of physics dynamics that happen all at once in a very quick time. It happens in every stellar activation cycle. If a planet's grids are okay and they don't have distortions, a planet can go through it, and the races on the planet's DNA is made to trigger activation of the Merkaba so they can move with the planet through Merkaba where the strange changes that happen don't affect them, and they can still see a formed constant hologram that's not going to be toxic to them. The way the mutations are right now on this planet, there's 2 ways things can go. One way is first of all, the situation is we are having an early opening in the halls of Amente. Because of what had to be done to stop pole shift by 2003, it also accelerated the whole timeline, because high frequencies had to be brought in to break the length of the Nibiruan grid. That would have thrown us right into pole shift as the gates progressively opened, and we would have rolled by 2008 completely, and it would have been a mess. It would have been the Bible Armageddon scenario. There are political issues, and this is part of what the secret is that they haven't been telling me. Oh, here we go. That I knew it was going to be released here at some point. Okay, we have made great success so far, and we have managed to assisting, we're just the anchoring rods here. But we do our part, and the higher founders races and guardian races are doing the rest of the work. But we were very successful in breaking the link of the Nibiruan Dadic crystal grid. This means several things. Now we stand a chance of clearing the rest really fast, and we're doing a good job, and they can't stop us. This upsets them. All right? They can't stop us from recoding their temples and using them to anchor the Christos frequency, which means they're not going to be able to do any of the stuff that they want to do. That puts them up against the wall. Fallen angelic forces. They're in the process of arranging a scenario that they've had on the agenda in the back burner for quite a while. There was a takeover plan, how they would get themselves in here without causing a ruckus. And it was to instigate wars first among human nations. Get people in a state of panic, get people scared, turn on each other, and all of a sudden the saviors would come in from the sky saying, you can't do this anymore. You're going to blow up your planet, and it's getting to the point where it's hurting other universes. Here's the way you need to behave to be part of the United Federation of Planets. There's another catchphrase you'll find on the internet. Supposedly, Earth is graduating to become a member of the United Federation of Planets. Well, unless you want to be in the Anunnaki War League, I suggest making a different choice. This was part of the program that they had set, and they were waiting for the right time. They were supposed to start it earlier, but because we started to wake the indigos up fast, and they were amazing. The indigo people that I've talked to, they come to the workshops. We tell them the most out there, amazing, intensive, hard to learn stuff, and they were right there. Oh, good, I get it. Okay, yeah, let's do this. I said, wow, yeah, these guys are great. Yeah. This is what they didn't count on. See, when you're really arrogant, you have this little habit of underestimating other people, particularly those you choose as adversaries. You think they're dumb. You think they won't figure it out. You think they won't be able to do anything to stop you if you're going to take their power. They got a surprise that enough indigos woke up fast enough to get the D12 current anchored here when the chance was there. That was not foreseen. They didn't expect that to happen. Now they have a problem on their hands. Oh dear, indigos can run the Maharata current. Uh-oh. All right. This has held off the World War scenario, drama, that they were planning on bringing here. They were planning on bringing it here to get a state created here that would be a perfect opening for their little introduction as loving space brothers, and by the way, we created you. They would show the similarities in their DNA to our DNA, and if you take a DNA read on a human now chemically, yes, it will look very similar to an Anunnaki, because half of its codes, more than half of its codes are blocked out. They had a whole plan, because they still can't take over the halls of Amente unless all the seals are open on the grids. They would have got rid of us a long time ago if they didn't need us. They need the human bodies, and especially the indigo bodies, because they have the high council seals. All the humans drop their codes first into the grids, and then the indigos come in and open the final release codes that will allow the grids to be accessed so they can get into the halls of Amente, so you can get into the planetary grids. Anunnaki can't do that alone, and neither can their hybrids. So it's a love-hate relationship between them and the indigos, because the indigos hold the final sets of codes that they will not be able to reach for a very long time. They would not only have to become a Christed race, they'd have to fully ascend and come back as a totally different pattern with the full set of codes, which they're a long way off in their evolution to do that. It's going to take them a long time to heal at that point. We were needed. And what they wanted to do was have us dumb enough and blind enough running our Merkabas in reverse, teach us how to drop our codes in reverse, but we didn't know it was reverse, and we would open them in a reverse matrix. But we listened enough to say, wait a minute, what's going on here? Okay. And we have been given huge amounts of data. I mean, I've been killing myself to try to get this stuff on paper. Sometimes there's not even time to get it on paper. They're telling me now that we've been very successful so far. And at this point, there's not much that the resistance, we call them the resistance races, resistance to the Emerald Covenant, resistance to the Christos agenda. There's not much they can do to stop the fact that we are going to clear their temples and the grids are getting clear. So what alternative they have right now is to continue forth with their chaos plan. This is coming through. There are decisions being made to instigate. It's already been being done in other places. Bosnia was a test run. They're using psychotronic technologies to beam stuff through the grids right now to stir up the emotional body and trigger the fight or flight. So people start to have an advanced ability to really get upset with each other. All right, I'm being told that a new program has been instilled as of 2 days ago. All right, as of 2 days ago. I have to remember that is so I can remember what date it is, because when I'm doing this stuff here, translating, I can't remember calendars here. All right, as of 2 days ago, there has been a new psychotronic program that's been released here on the planet, and it's starting to directly affect. It's a very powerful one. It's the beginning. Okay, it's the beginning of a frequency fence. A frequency fence is where they literally interrupt brainwave patterns to keep them within a very small range, so that when the DNA activates in people, it can't plug in, so it literally shuts off, so you can't get the higher perceptions in. I'm being told now that they've started to run this grid, and it's going to be progressively increased on a rapid level. They're hoping to stop the indigos that have started to wake up before they get enough critical mass of the frequencies in their body to shut them down before they can become any more of a nuisance. It also will affect humans that way, and anybody else that happens to get in the way of the frequency. This is something, all right, they're saying, what we need to do is not hard. It involves round tables, and it involves linking with the timeline that we're attempting to move into, the bridge zone timeline, which is the inner earth timeline. They're saying that the round table that we're going to be asked to do on Monday night, and they're also saying to expect a bit of interference, but keep going anyway. At one point, when we were doing work out there last year or whatever, we had the local boys in blue visit us, and what are you doing? I said, well, would you like to join us? We're just a meditation peace healing group. No, that's all right, and they went away. they're saying there is more to this, but what we're going to be asked to do is do a round table using the Vestica code in a way that will assist to link into the planetary grids and then link into the inner Earth planetary grids. And what it's going to do is link the indigos to their inner Earth counterparts, and then their counterparts to their Terran counterparts in density 2. And it will create a strong enough frequency in the indigos that it will block the effects that the psychotronic device will have. The psychotronic device is only a beginning. There are political machines being set in motion at this time because there is a tentative date for the beginning of 2003 as a target time to begin. It will involve disruptions in financial issues and communities. It is suggested at this point to become aware that it is a time not to be frightened, but a time not to be overly attached to monetary issues. It is a time to look on the internet, on those conspiracy theory networks, and to see what they suggest for if FEMA gets put in motion. If martial law went down, what's the best way to prepare? They're trying to tell us that the scenario that's been on hold for a while has been set in motion. And I just found they're just telling me this now. It's not something to be worried about, they're saying. It's something to be aware of. It's something that needs healing, a healing response. So we don't go into fear on it. We realize that with the work that we're doing, if we can realize the significance of the work we're doing, now using the Vestica, that's much more powerful than I even have any idea. I can feel there's a huge amount of really important stuff behind using that code. But right now we're being taught how to use it in a way where we can link with our parallels while we do our Merkabas individually, which will help us. It'll create our protection field where it'll bounce the psychotronics out. They're using a D11 reverse psychotronic, which is a really high-level transmission. That's not just normal, government plays with this kind of stuff. It's not just one of those. This is, okay, you took out our main grid. Well, where we still have a few, we're going to use them, right? This is one of the main areas. Oh, wonderful. This was the activation site, I'm just being told. This is why it's been like me here. I moved here, and I said, there's something with this place. It's a lovely place. It's a nice high energy. But there is an undercurrent of something weird here. And I couldn't figure out what it was. I've been progressively learning that the flash lines are much faster here. Everything is intensified here. And they're just saying that this is the temple complex, that they've anchored this in, and they're now spreading it through the other ones. But this place is amplifying the heck out of it. Now, they can't access it fully. They can only get in the peripheral grids that weren't fully cleared yet. They can't access the Grual directly. It's already anchored on a D12. They can't override that. They can't break that link. Just like they can't break what we did over in Stonehenge. That's a D12, set the pattern back to its right thing. So they have to go for the holes in the grids right now. The only place they can anchor things are the places that haven't, because there had not been enough time yet for the vibration to spread to clear everything. So they're going for the places of power that have not been fully cleared. This is one of them. This is why we were guided to do a round table here. We are going to heal the temple that's here. We are going to recode it to the D12 Christos template, and that's going to at least neutralize that particular program. It's also going to clear some of the stuff that's been affecting strand 2, which has been keeping strand 1 and 2, the physical and emotional bodies, in a very polarized, distorted way. So we should be able to look forward to, within about 3 or 4 months' time, it's going to take for the changes to begin in our bodies, where we'll start to feel a renewed energy. They're saying a renewed energy in the body form as far as your relationship to it. I don't know if you've ever had the war with the body, but I swear ever since I walked in, I feel like I'm at war with the thing. And I'm trying to love it. You know what I mean? All right, I love you, but what are you doing to me? What is wrong? How do I fix this hologram? That's what it feels like. You understand it's a hologram, okay, and I know there's a distortion in there that I have to fix. And I try like heck to do all sorts of things, and it's not responding. What is with the hologram? It has a life of its own. It won't listen to me. It won't listen, because when we think the thoughts and project them from here, or even from D4, they're hitting reversals, and they're coming out. You're amplifying the problem because it's reversing the intention of your thought. So if you're saying, heal, it's saying, unheal. If you're saying, put in D12, it's saying, don't put in D12. But we have the little bit of areas that weren't reversed, that have kept us alive, that we can access to heal things. Now these problems are going to be shifting because of the work we'll do with the round table here. This round table is specifically to clear gate 2 and the second axiotonal line. There are other gates we will have to clear, and they're saying it's kind of going to be like a cat and mouse game at this point. The winner of this little board game is going to be who has the critical mass of people doing which spin, and who gets to transmit what through what power sites first. If they can get to a power site before us and get a disruptive code sent in, they can affect an area, set it in motion, and it will start to affect the people. They do have the ability, just because the way timing works here, they can trigger conflicts between people. And because they realize that's their only hope right now of putting enough disruption and fear energy, because the indigos clear fear energy out of the group psyche. We're like vacuum cleaners. Right? With an indigo imprint, we came in to help to do that, to help them transmute their karma, to help them transmute their distortions. So if they can get the fields of the general populace all aflutter and a mess, we're going to have a whole lot more mess to clear, and they know it. So it's a distraction tactic that's being used, and it's also has to do with certain things they're still going to attempt to do from Stargate sites that the grids have not been cleared around. And it's going to be literally who gets where first at the right time, because there are magnetic peaks where the spin of Stargates in their grids gets to its highest point, and that's where you need to put the pattern in. So and because the grids are fluctuating so much right now, you can't pinpoint it, it's, this is going to happen next Thursday exactly. There will be a range where we'll know something is going to happen within that range, and we'll be waiting for the peak. That's when we need to go out to do it. That's why tomorrow they pinned this one down to these grids peak or reach their fastest spin rate tomorrow evening, and it goes in for about a 5-day period. We'll start it right at the beginning of the peak and get it in as it peaks, so it'll take it up and hold it at its highest. The frequency that we're going to generate by doing a round table is we're going to anchor. This is called a Kundalini round table, not just a Maharata round table. A round table, literally, you become a standing wave of light that is literally communicating and sending source consciousness and energy right down into the planetary shields, the planetary grids, where you stand. And it's being amplified, not in your field, but in the shield under you, the whole group. It makes this huge shield of energy that literally, when it hits critical mass, you can see it usually if you shift to D6 perception. So you could try to imagine the color indigo, an indigo blue, and try to see what was happening in front of you when we do the round table, like after the fact, to see what we did, to see if you can pick up anything up on the indigo spectrum, because it'll show it about D6 and higher. If you want to look at what's at D4, use the D4 frequency band, green. You do a scan, just kind of close your eyes, look around in that color range, and you'll start to get perceptions. So we're going to be asked to begin the process of healing a very large anchoring temple, which is this one. We're safe while we're doing it because of the Vesica code. They'll show us how to use more of that tomorrow, but the Vesica code is going to give us the ability to do links, like little circles linking together. You're going to use that one. They showed me a code last night, and I said, there's something really special about that one. It's a 3-way Vesica. It's a 3-circle Vesica. It's the Divine Trinity. I knew that. I saw it and I said, oh my God, I haven't seen it. I get this. I can almost explain it to people, but not quite. So it's still like on scribble pads, but we're working on that. That stuff should be in with the when the chart pack for this gets done. But they're going to be showing us how to use the 3-way Vesica code, which is literally links you to source and the primal sound fields. The ascendant masters levels of ourselves are going to be running this show. We're going to make a link, and it's all right. They're saying once it's activated within the body, it begins the process of embodying as much of your ascendant master's level self as you can. Some people have, if you have a whole 48-strand DNA template as an indigo, you would be able to literally anchor your whole Ekar self, which is your whole self at the first level of individuation from source. If you have a 36-strand template, you would be able to anchor 36 octaves of your identity, which is still in the Ascendant Master's range. If you have 24, you can anchor a Rishi range. It's still in the time matrix, but it's still major level of consciousness. All these are above avatar level. Okay? Humans with a 12-strand pattern have the ability to anchor their avatar level. This begins the process. It's the point of no return. It's saying, okay, I'm ready to be me down here as fast as possible, but as pleasant as possible, hopefully. we're being offered an opportunity to help ourselves. And he said, all right, they're saying there's one more surprise that we'll talk about tomorrow, but it has to do with, we're not just going to leave you hanging with words like evacuations and words like political issues like possibly war. We're not going to just leave you in those spaces. There are things that can be done to make the severity of the hologram that's going to be projected lesser, at least for the groups who are doing the certain things. There's a protection field that indigos can create to try to harmonize and hold off the effects that the psychotronics will have on the people who have smaller DNA templates, who are not going to be able to override this. We're going to be asked to form groups, okay? Indigo groups that have indigo people, but also have anybody else who wants to join them. We're going to be given certain types of world peace meditations. You know how everybody just loves those. Anunnaki love them. Draconians love them. Everybody loves those things. Anybody in the New Age movement loves world peace meditations. Half of them don't know what they're doing when they're doing world peace meditations. They have no idea if they're really setting good stuff or if they're setting not good stuff. But we're going to be asked to help put out the wake-up call. And you're kidding me. Okay, I had visions of this a long time ago, and I used to think, oh, what a wild idea. Where'd that come from? Must have come from here. I had visions when I first walked in, and I didn't know what the heck they meant, where I saw groups of people all over the planet, little groups of people, psychic people, that were very good with their psychic stuff. They were like master psychics. Didn't know who they were at the time. And they were doing focus groups, focusing on literally nuclear installments. And they were loving the nuclear weapons to death. They were doing something with their psychic power. They were called together. They had lots of practice. They had done casework with, they would assist in projecting themselves, where their bodies would be in one place, and they would, as a group, project to one place to do healings. They started with learning how to do healings of remote healing, projecting a part of you over to a place, into the planetary grid at a certain place. I go over to Tahiti now, learning how to project yourself over to Tahiti and leave your body here. It's a lot cheaper. And be able to run the currents here and project them through where you projected yourself to. That group started that way, and I knew that. And I said, what are they up to? Wow, it must be like coming from some place that had a war or something, where they were trying to stop a war or something. Duh. I didn't know it was going to be this place. It looks like what's happening. And what they're telling me is happening is we're going to be asked to start forming groups that start doing casework with anybody that wants to help. Of course, they have to run the Maharata, because you can't access enough frequency to do that effectively, to do even a grid healing someplace else, or go to a person and do a healing in the astral with them. You can't pull enough frequency to do a real effective job that's going to stick. So the reason you're going to teach people how to do the Maharic Seal is if they want to be good psychics and learn how to do it well, they're not going to have enough power if they don't. People that are being messed with by the Draconian or the Anunnaki races have a big thrill about metaphysical development. They like power. They want theirs back. So they'll play any nasty little game they can think of. Just, it'll give me power, I will. They don't know any better because they've been trained. There's the power acquisition. That's the important part about it. Let them start there. Start where they are. Love them anyway. But teach them well. The only way you're going to get enough power to do the good stuff, obviously you already know how, right? Is to learn how to do the Maharic Seal first. They don't want to hear about Anunnaki. They don't want to hear about Draconians. They don't want to hear about they have a world service mission, some of them. But if they can get power to get into, like, the astral field on their own, or actually to get more of themselves together, that'll help them grow when you start to work with that, because if they have field infiltration, the Maharic Seal will start to burn it off and neutralize it. So they'll start to get free, where more of their real focus will come in. And then they will be very more willing to work with planetary healing, even if this kind of stuff would scare them to death. Indigos can deal with this kind of stuff, most of them. I haven't met many that go running out the door going, I got a few that kind of go, see you later, I'll deal with this later. And then they come back going, well, I thought about it, and when I first had an emotional reaction to it, it was kind of like really intense for me and a little too heavy, and I'm used to light, love, and clueless, and oh dear, this isn't. But, I thought about it, and it makes sense, and it feels like the right thing. And all I care about is the truth. All I want to know is what's true. And it feels right. So they've come back and said, we'll work with this. Even though it's scary. Some of it's scary. So we're going to be asked, and there's going to be information given on setting up groups in whatever areas we are. They can even be done through the internet. But distributing certain types of techniques. We're going to learn some techniques tomorrow night. They're telling me that tomorrow we're going to learn some techniques to link ourselves to our inner earth selves, to the Terran inner selves, to the Tara cells in the higher, the higher time fields where in density 2. It will create enough frequency to hold us stable, so our fields will be protected from the psychotronics. We're going to be, at some point, shown how to assist other people to do the techniques that will allow them to plug into that field, where they'll still have their Maharic seal up, so they're not going to take anybody else's stuff on. But it's not like a group Merkaba, where you happen to open your fields to everything else in the group. That's what anybody that's teaching Merkaba is doing if they're not using a Maharic seal first. They are literally having you open your fields to take on everything else, so the stuff you're taking on from each other isn't the stuff you have to worry about. It's the stuff you're taking on from the higher dimensions, like half of the Anunnaki League. That's the problem. You won't be teaching people how to use Merkaba that way. You'll be teaching them how to do neat stuff, if you want to. You don't have to. Just hold in frequency yourself. If you don't have time to deal with things like that, and it's kind of like, well, I don't have time to save the planet right now. I'm too busy. I have to go to work. You know what I mean? Yeah, okay. We're not saving the planet, any one of us. We're doing a job that we commissioned for a long time ago. We're not the saviors of the universe. The universe doesn't need saviors. It simply needs portions of source that come into play roles to keep balances. We're not the saviors. I'm not your savior. You're not the planet's savior. We are assisters. We are helpers. We're here to love and to heal ourselves, and as we heal ourselves, we help to heal the planet and vice versa. So we're in the middle of an amazing drama, and there is a reward at the end of this. If we do well, particularly with getting our fields to where we can run enough frequency, we can make those amazing shifts that can happen in a body that can get you through a Stargate when they open. All right, there's more to be given, they're saying, on the issues of evacuation. They're not saying we're going into pole shift, because actually we're not. But there's still the 3-day particle conversion period to deal with. And if we can't create a strong enough frequency field that will buffer what that means for all the people on the planet right now, there would have to be temporary evacs to bring them in to safe zones. All right. Now there's ways to set safe zones too. The Q zones that when the tribal shield exercise does. Every place you are that you run one of those, you set a safe zone. All right. So it might be as simple as bringing people over to your house or to this nice park down the street that you set a safe zone in. Keeping them in that space for a while. There'll be instruction provided. If it gets where the frequencies are going to be too much and we can't make the buffer, then there would be literally, excuse me, would you like to come to Inner Earth with me just for about 3 days? We'll be back, and it's a really nice trip. We will have the frequency in our fields that will be able to sustain them in a Merkaba. We will have the frequency to be able to open their Maharic shield and hold it for them. They can trigger it open, but they might not be able to hold it open. We can hold it open so they can hold a Merkaba to go through the gates temporarily if it gets that bad. So it's not like the sky is falling, it's time to run, guys. We haven't got that call yet, okay? But we are at the point where it's time, they're saying it's time, we need to be aware that time is moving very quickly and that there are some events that are coming up that are major. They want us to realize, first of all, if we're going to see some weird stuff politically, if we allow that to suck our energy, it's going to mess up what we're trying to do with ourselves. You can look at it and say, yeah, they're just acting according to their nature, aren't they? Yeah, they are. They're not bad beings. They're just very confused. Confused beings do very confusing things. And if you get into it thinking, I hate them, how could they? Got to stop them. We're going to destroy them. They're going to destroy us? No, we're going to destroy them first. No, we're not. We're not going to destroy anybody. We're going to love them to death. We're going to love them so much that they either have to decide to do something else because there's so much love, which is a state of vibrational harmonization running through on the D12 imprint, that they can't do anything energy-wise. Maybe some of them will decide it's not worth the fight. They're all offered opportunity to enter the Emerald Covenant. We need to realize that we need to focus, we need to be aware of the negatives that are happening, the things that are of the lower frequency, but we need not to get caught up with them. This is where engaged detachment applies. Yes, it's happening. Okay, I have X amount of energy to deal with today. Do I really want to invest that in spending 4 hours on the internet checking out every move they're making? Or is it enough to keep a little monitor on it sometimes? Yeah, I see that, okay, enough. I have better things to do, like work with my Merkaba spin. You're much better off acknowledging that, yes, there's issues happening, keeping abreast of them to a degree, but don't oversaturate it. Don't get so caught up in, what are they doing this? What are they doing? Don't get caught up so much in the we, us versus them, consciousness. We are all a we here, and we're doing stuff, and you're doing stuff too, and we're all part of a drama, and it is a healing drama, even though it might look chaotic. All right? So there's a lot of things that we'll wrap it up tomorrow with more of a... There's another piece, and I don't know what it is yet either, but there's one more. Oh, okay, that too. It's a good thing, but it's not. It's still on security release, and they're saying more will be given tomorrow. It has to do with, they're trying to prepare us a little bit for being aware that yes, we have the power to make a huge difference because we're working in cooperation with literally the universal spectrum at this point. We are working as operatives of Source, and we are doing it in a way that brings love, acknowledging that everybody is a part of Source. But Source does have a preference for if there's a choice between pain or not pain. Source would prefer people itself to learn its lessons in the least painful way as possible. Source is not a merciless consciousness. We're being taught to look at the drama, see where there are things where we can insert our beingness as I am love, I am power as part of it, and I am Source, I am peace. If we can hold that neutral zone while taking action without being attached to the action or the outcome, we will be able to run the frequencies, because every time you get an attachment, you get a polarity. If it has to be this way, if you get scared that it's not going to be this way, too much invested in what you'd like to manifest, you get the opposite. All right? We need to be in a peaceful space knowing we're just ascended master beings or rishi beings, and the humans are just avatar beings. We're all equal and beloved in Source. We're in a drama here, and it requires healing. Some of us remember that, some of us don't. Some of us are helping because we remember, some of us aren't because they forgot. It's our job to help them remember if we can. But if not, it's our job to not let them wipe out the whole drama. Lovingly, we can do things with energy that can prevent the actions from causing calamity here. That's what we're being asked to do. So it's like being in a nice space between ignorance and awareness. You have like ignorance is bliss stuff, so I can be happy, happy, joy, joy all the time. We're asked to find a place in between where we can let both happiness and that would not be a pleasant thing. I do have a preference for happiness, but where you have so much trust in the I am God. You, not me. Well, I am, but not for you. You are God for you. If you have enough trust and feeling of safety with that, begin to go into that space and anchor that consciousness. It's not just an awareness. It's not just words you're anchoring. It's the frequency that comes with it. You're bringing the frequency of you as Source in. That is what will heal this, and our hologram will get better. So there's going to be a lot of information released. We're moving in very fast times right now. And there are new blocks of information being provided. Half the time they're on security release, so they can't be tampered with before they get down and expressed the first time. At least there's one expression where they came out the way they were sent originally. You'll find all sorts of this popping up now on the internet before you guys, even if you guys said nothing, because it's being intercepted. Every time something comes down and is translated, it's intercepted by both draconian and Anunnaki forces. It takes them about 3 days to translate it into their reverse language patterning so they can see what was said. But then they act on it. And they take parts of it saying, oh, this is what's really happening, and then they do the 20% twist and get people doing another thing instead of what needs to be done. So we're simply being asked to go for it with happiness, with joy, with realizing it's a hologram, but it's a hologram that feels very real. It feels very real if a bomb comes and drops on your city and the buildings fall down and you're in one. You will feel it fall on you. Now, you're not going to be dead as a being, but your Mayan body parts might be. They'll transmute into something else, and not instantly either. You'll probably go through the whole slow transmutation process of having it buried and then having things... I'm not going to go further than that. You know what happens when you go in the ground, right? All right. So We've covered a lot of ground today. We've covered the basic problems. Yeah. Time to wrap it up and bring it down from up here down to a nice thing here so we can have a nice night's sleep, right? What that means is they're not time cycles that are natural to this 15-dimensional time matrix or its double. They're from an adjacent time matrix, and every once in a while they temporarily bleed through into our timelines, and their reality fields open into ours. Now, they come in every 440 years and stay open for 110 years. They are opening for the first time in this cycle in 2002. Now, if it wasn't for the fact that the mirage zones, and the word mirage is where our word mirage came from, because from the ancient times, some people would see these cities before them, just like if you're out in the desert and all of a sudden you get that heat effect and you start to see the cities. But they were actually seeing the mirage zones. But if they didn't have the DNA coding that would allow them to make the angular rotation of particle spin shift, they could walk right through the hologram and it would not be real to them. Now, the mirage zones are physically real places just like this is, if you have your body's particles at the proper angular rotation of particle spin. The mirage zones connect to inner Earth and to the inner Earth portals. Inner Earth is always there, but the portals are usually shut because this place has been like a battle zone since the Atlantean period. The portals to inner Earth are going to be opening because of the stellar activation cycle. And this is a stellar activation cycle that the mirage zones do open during the process of it. It is because of that the Bridge Zone Project could be attempted. The Bridge Zone Project is a process of trying to assist this planetary system from not ending up in a fallen time matrix. If it had been left alone and intervention wasn't given, the timeline that we were on would have taken us into a failed stellar activation cycle. It would have created pole shift. That was what was being predicted in biblical revelations. And we wouldn't be worrying about it in about 10 years. We would all be not here anymore. Well, because of the intervention, the Bridge Zone Project is the name of the intervention, the mechanics that are being used to create this intervention. We are going to be able to separate the timelines, the lower vibrating or the lower frequency particle base and consciousness of Earth will not be able to make the shift into the bridge zone, but the people that have a minimum of 4.5 strand DNA activation will be able to make the shift into inner Earth. Now, the mirage zone becomes important because you only need 4.25 strand activation to make it through into there. It's not quite as much as having to have all of your fourth and half of your fifth. You only need a quarter of your fifth strand activated. It's not just activating it, because indigos can activate those strands temporarily. It's activating and holding the activation as your consistent particle base, which takes a lot more time. You can activate them temporarily and then they shut down again. That's how we've been running frequency and all of that. If the planetary grids do not sustain a fifth dimensional activation, it's very difficult to sustain in your body a fifth dimensional activation or strand 5 activation. So the mirage zones create an opportunity for, if there are links made, frequency links and major frequency links made between Earth's Templar here and planetary shields here and inner Earth's planetary shields through the mirage zone and into Sirius B Stargate 6, which is where the support will come so the place doesn't roll during the stellar activation cycle. The mirage zones are going to offer an opportunity to fulfill the Bridge Zone Project. Now, I talked in the beginning about, we got the word that evacuations may be on the roster, and not yet, but it may be coming to that point. The mirage zones offer an opportunity that if the indigos can wake up fast enough, there's something that can be done to avoid that necessity. Now, the evac, if it did occur, would be done very close to the 3-day particle conversion period. Every stellar activation cycle that commences and goes through its cycle has what is called a 3-day particle conversion period, where literally the portions of the matter base and the consciousness of the planet that are capable of holding the higher frequency will, their particles or atoms will convert and reappear in a time in the next time zone. All right, they will literally disappear from here and reappear in the usually it's the Terran time cycle. usually you don't have to go by way of inner Earth. You actually transmute through to inner Earth where the halls of Amente stargates are, and then go up, and you'd end up manifest on Terra. Now, because this stellar activation cycle is not a perfect example of how they're supposed to run, because the planetary grids have been damaged for so long, the process will involve this, literally the planetary base being shifted into alignment with inner Earth through the Miyaj zone. Indigos incarnated to assist in this process. Indigos have the ability to run extremely high amounts of frequency. They can anchor the primal sound field codes from beyond the time matrix. Those frequencies act as a stabilizing rod, which means if we are able to anchor enough, it's like making big pillars of invisible sound that connect directly through into Stargate 6 and all the way up into the primal sound field, that will hold the link that is being made between this time cycle, the Miyaj zone, and inner Earth. Now, what I didn't know, and this is the new information that was given, there's something called, two things. One thing is called a bivector code. This is the Vesica Pisces symbol that we see. Our guys don't call it Vesica Pisces, I found out. They call it the Biveca code, B-I-V-E-C-A. There's also something called a Triveca code. The Bi and Triveca codes represent the mathematical coding releases for time continua. The Biveca code releases two time continua into each other, and the Triveca code is the code that can take those and link them into inner Earth. Now, inner Earth is the time continuum cycles that runs on the trions. So it's the trion continuum, where you still have polarity, but within the unity of the whole. It's a much higher space to evolve in than here. I just got attacked by the tree. It's throwing berries at me. Okay. Now, the new information that's being given, there's a couple aspects of it. The most important thing, first of all, is an explanation of part of what the Indigo Project is, the Stewardship Initiative. There's a necessity of creating a minimum of 144 major trivecta zones, which are done by doing what are called trivecta roundtables. That means we'll do a roundtable the way we're beginning to learn how to do them, but there will be codes added. We will be using the bivecta and trivecta codes and literally imbuing them in using our Merkaba spirals, imbuing them into the planetary grids and also into our DNA template. Once these codes are imbued in your body, it means it's activated the potentialities that you can rapidly make the shift in angular rotation of particle spin, which means when the Miyaj zones begin their opening cycle and it was time for you to get an invitation, you would be able to fulfill that invitation by going through. Now, the Indigos have the ability to embody these codes first and to hold them and integrate them, where even 12-strand humans would have a difficulty doing that. They don't activate as quickly as Indigos do. What the ideal scenario for the Indigos is if they can get together and wake up enough to create 144, and it's not all in one place, 144 of these anchoring rod trivecta roundtables. And, this is a big one, 144,000 bivecta roundtables. That's where our odds go down, okay? Now, if that potentiality can be fulfilled, we would actually be able, through the indigo fields themselves, to sustain the link on a planetary level, where there could be a buffer zone created. The Miyaj zone Merkaba field could bend just enough, and we would be the ones holding it with these anchoring rods that we set, and that's how many anchoring rods at minimum it would take. 144 of the large trivecta roundtable anchoring rods, and 144,000 of the smaller bivecta anchoring rods. Now, the first one doesn't sound too hard. The second one's going to be a challenge to get enough people in different places to anchor those. We're going to have to keep track of them. How many are we on now? We have till the end of 2002 to get those set. Now, if they're set, the evac thing will not have to happen, because what will happen is there will be a buffer zone created that we will be maintaining through those anchoring rods, that we will have the protection of the Miyaj zone Merkaba spiral, so people that otherwise would not be able to sustain living conditions during a 3-day particle conversion period, it would actually be like a hologram within a hologram, because the 3-day particle conversion period will go on around us. But if that field can be created and sustained, it would create a stable form constant zone, or a stable hologram within it, under the protection of the Meyer's zone Merkaba spiral. That's the ideal case scenario, because that means that, and it looks like somewhere in 2003, the 3-day particle conversion cycle is going to start. They're hoping, they would like to be able to push it off till at least 2006. They don't think that's going to be possible, because there are things going on in the grids right now, thanks to our buddies who choose to consider us adversaries, that are accelerating the grid speed on an erratic level. It's bad enough that it's accelerating, because our guys had to open Stargate 6 and Sirius B to hold the place so we could break the link of the Nibiruan hold on Stonehenge. That could have been balanced enough in the grids to where it wouldn't have caused any major issues. But right now there's a campaign going on that I'll talk about in a little bit after we get through what the solution is, that's expediting the whole plan, and that's why it looks like, unless something can be done to stretch out the timeline here, to slow the frequency down a little bit, the frequency climb, that 2003, somewhere in there, probably toward the end, looks like the time when the 3-day particle conversion is going to appear. Now, 3-day particle conversion is interesting. In the Voyagers book, Voyagers Volume 2, the original printing, it explains some of the things about what that looks like. It's on the 3rd day of the particle conversion that the final separation of the timelines takes place, which means that's when the matter base that can't hold the higher frequency goes into the phantom time matrix probability, and where the grid zone, we completely separate from that, and then from there, the ascension cycle, when it goes all the way up to Tara, would happen. Thank you. So, particle conversion...